Let's hear your analysis on Denzel Boston, who I believe you refer to as Mike Evans Jr. or Diet Coke Mike Evans, I think.
Yeah. Diet Coke Mike Evans. Yeah, let's reel that back a little bit.
Hello, welcome back to Football 301. I'm your host, Nate Tice. Very, very fun show for you today. It is the capper of our positional preview series for the prospects of the 2026 NFL Draft. PPP. That's not the player performance incentive. That is just me rhyming and saying words with P, alliterative stuff. I don't know what I'm talking about right now. Let's just get into this because I've been really excited for this show. The O-line show I'm very excited for, which was almost 2 hours with my dad. We'll see what the over-under is on this one because I'm joined by the guy that does the receiver stuff on top of just everything on Football 301, but also on his own show, the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, Reception Perception. He's writing up profiles. I would say by the minute, this is probably the longest he goes without charting somebody or writing somebody up or comparing someone to Sterling Shepard, which I really enjoy. But joining me again on a Tuesday for the receiver preview series, this is my guy, Matt Harmon. How you doing today, Matt? Great to see you.
Good to see you too, Nate. Yeah, I would say this is probably the times that I'm not charting somebody. I'm either on a show, so that could range anywhere from 60 to however long this one goes in terms of length of not charting players and time at the gym. Although sometimes in between reps, I'm still like checking this, not charting, but checking up on the empire, checking up on what's going on receptionperception.com. So yeah, man, it's that time of year. I am rounding out what I hope is going to be 30 players charted for the site this year, which would be the most in RP history. So very excited to talk about this class with you today.
Woo. In RP history, really, this class too. Actually, there is a lot of depth to this class, which could be fun to talk about. But also it's like, I don't know if you know this, but the Blue Collar Comedy Tour, there was a guy named Ron White. Is this a reference that you're going to pick up or not?
Dude,
but he had
I love the.
I feel like I'm in safe
Ron
territory.
White. I love. Yeah, you're safe.
Okay.
You're safe territory on this one.
I know where you grew up, so I'm like, all right.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we can get in here with this one.
I've watched the Blue Collar Comedy Tour.
But he says, they talk about bouncing, and all they do is watch Roadhouse and everything. But like, I thought about that when you're like, I'm bouncing, and I'm charting, and if I'm not charting, I'm thinking about charting, and if
I'm thinking about charting,
I turn on the TV and think about charting. Yeah, that came to mind when I was thinking about that. But yeah. Also should also say this is episode 200 of Football 301. We're getting up there. Almost like a UFC number count now. But no, we don't have Brock Lesnar headlining our show today. But episode 200 of Football 301. And that's why this is, that was just a happenstance thing. So also thank you anybody that's been checking out the show for the last couple of years as we talk during the season, but also do this prospect series, which I always think is a lot of fun with our draft coverage. Matt does a great job, Chuck, all the guys, all the guests. So really appreciate those guys joining us, but also you guys checking us out. Really, really appreciate that. 200 episodes of Football 301. But before we get into the main vet, one quick little receiver news that just came up. I just thought it was interesting. Kind of a little bit of the Brian Windhorst meme on this one. Dontayvion Wicks traded to the Eagles for a 2026 fifth and a 2027 sixth. I think this is, you kind of hinted at this on Twitter, but Dontayvion Wicks leaving the Packers, loaded receiver room, even after losing Romeo Doubs to free agency. This is kind of by design. This is also kind of hitting on a lot of good, maybe not amazing receivers. And you've had a lot of fun trying to sort out this entire room. So now we're losing two of the bodies this offseason. First Doubs in free agency going to the Patriots. Again, a signing I like. Now Dontayvion Wicks going to the Eagles. First off, before we get into maybe what this means, how do you like to fit with Wicks to the Eagles, assuming AJ Brown is and is not there post June 1?
Okay, well, AJ Brown has spiritually been a member of the New England Patriots for probably about a month now. So
long.
Yeah,
before I get into it, I've had 3 different people, sources that I kind of like. I'm not the source guy, but 3 people just say something that, like, as I've talked to them that are with teams that have all told me that that feels pretty much done. Like the post June trade. I'm not trying to like break news or anything here. I think everybody like is in agreement here. Everybody knows. Yes, but go on with what you think about this.
Yeah, everybody knows. And by the way, something that came out today when we're talking about the Eagles wide receiver room, this is Jimmy Kempski reported this today, that there are people inside the Eagles building that believe that Devontae Smith can take a Jackson Smith and Jigba type jump in production if he is the number one on the team. And that's the second time this has been, at least the second time that's been floated out of the building. Because the first time I heard it was at the Combine. And that was obviously like months and months ago. Yeah. And that was when when they're soft launching the idea of what if AJ Brown isn't on this team? Because I think they've known for a while that he's not on the team. And so again, when that was a thing right away, that my first signal, like, oh, he's gone. If they're starting to soft launch the idea of like Devontae Smith is this year's JSN, they're already looking at him as this is the number one, and how can we complete the room around him, which is kind of the type of moves that they've made. They sign Hollywood Brown, they sign Elijah Moore, they trade for Dontayvion Wicks. And I think Wicks, of those three moves that we just talked about there, definitely has the most upside, because I think he's still kind of the most unknown commodity of those guys. Like, I think we know what Hollywood Brown and Elijah Moore are at this point in their NFL careers. With Wicks, like, I think he got a little bit overrated as a separator in his like second season. He's a good route runner. He is a good separator, but he also kind of took a step back there from his first season, which was really promising, especially in his release moves off the line of scrimmage against man and press coverage. Obviously, we know he needs to correct issues at the catch point, both just dropping the football and how he attacks the football as a contested catch wide receiver. I think those can get better, but they haven't gotten, they were a little bit better last year. So that was a good like step forward. And obviously he's reuniting with Sean Mannion, who is on the Packers staff and is now the Eagles offensive coordinator. So I like the move. It's a good buy low. The fact that they gave him a 1-year contract extension right after trading for him is very promising as well. Doesn't preclude them from drafting a wide receiver at some point in the NFL draft. I'd be shocked if they don't take a wide receiver at some point in the draft, even if it could be the first round. But yeah, I think it's a good move to get like a level of insurance in there and a guy that does still have some upside and can play multiple positions too. That's the thing. Even if Wicks doesn't reach this theoretical upside that he has as a guy who can really get open, he is still somebody that can credibly play all three receiver positions. Played slot for the Packers last year. Because he's good against press, he can line up at X receiver. You can obviously move him around as a Z too. So yeah, I think that for that reason, even if he's just like your third guy and allows you to move everybody else around, that's still a valuable addition here too.
Yeah, it's like one of these where it makes sense for the Packers to be moving him. Like, I really do think, obviously they drafted Matthew Golden for a reason. They're going to give him runway. We've talked about this. Christian Watson, I think both has like really improved last year once he came back from injury, where to the sense where I'm like, I like him now, straight up. Same with Dobbs. Same. I mean, we've talked about this endlessly. I know, and both made the All Football 301 team, yada yada. I know it's arbitrary, but I think both of us are kind of like, they've been fascinating growths from players, like both of them. And I think that's what's really cool, but it made other guys expendable, Wicks being one of those. And I think the fact that he can play outside, I like that you mentioned that he can play in the slot. I'm very curious. Again, this is going to be a fascinating experiment with Mannion and Hurts and what this personnel is on this team. But I love how you said it. Like, now it doesn't preclude them from taking a receiver, but now they don't have to take one in the first round. If they like a guy, they can take him. But now if they go offensive line the first round, if they go DB in the first round, which I don't think they would, but maybe safety. But if they go tackle in the first round, okay, now that's not like, all right, well, now we got to get our receiver. And then now we're on day 2 and man, all the receivers we like are gone. Oh God, this is terrible. Now it's, if there is a guy that they like, okay, cool. Now we can swoop him up as well. And then if there's not, then we can address a different position with a player we do prefer. So I always like this, like teams, smart teams at least, and I always consider the Eagles one of those, they are going to get it. They should be getting ahead of what their potential needs are going to be, because everybody knows your needs, and then the prices are going to change. When you're feeling a little desperate, when something happens, a guy gets cut, a guy gets hurt, an injury, or they know that you're looking for a position, you have a weakness, a hole. So I like that they kind of did the step before the step, even though it seems like that final step, which is the Brown trade, it's just like almost a lock to happen. Again, reading between the lines, even if I hadn't heard anything, just seeing what Mike Sando said, I believe Adam Schefter said something as well, where he's like, I wouldn't be surprised. And it's like, okay, you're not saying that just willy-nilly. They don't just say those things. They like being right. So that's why they report those things. So Deja Brown to the Patriots thing, I will review that when it happens. So I don't want to get out ahead of something that's still hypothetical. But I did like this for the Eagles because he's a nice complementary player. If they add another, like you said, he could be a good 3. He can do some dirty work stuff. It's fine. Jalen Hurts never really targets the slot. So that's the thing too, is that this offense is going to be curious. Like, so now you have a guy like Wicks that's valid on the outside. So again, just these little small things that all make sense as far as the fit, the need, everybody. So just one of these things where it feels like the move before the move, but it makes a lot of sense, I think, from the Eagles standpoint and the Packers standpoint. So nice, tidy move a couple of weeks before the draft for a 5th and 6th round pick that we're going to spend 8 minutes
Green
of
Bay
analysis
too.
on.
By the way, Green Bay's 100% taking maybe one of the guys we talked about here today. Like they will take like a big bodied receiver at some point in the 3rd round. This is going to happen. People forget that they took Savion Williams in the 3rd round of last year's draft, and it's easy to forget because he had more rush attempts than targets last year. And so I get it why people might have forgotten that they took a wide route. They took 2 wideouts last year. So I'm hoping that Jaden Reed can make that 3rd-year leap too. He's still, or I guess 4th-year leap. He's still a player I'm really fond of as well. He just wasn't healthy last year, and they've kind of always limited him to a slot-only option. But they like. Reed has had injury issues. Watson has had injury issues. I still think Matthew Golden is unproven at this point. So LaFleur kind of tipped us off to this when at the league meetings he said, somebody or there were players that were upset with their role on the team. I think it was pretty obvious to see like that those were wideouts, because that's what happens when you have a room that doesn't have hierarchy. Like you don't have a 1, and then this is where everyone else files in, and you rotate these dudes all the time. So guys are going to kind of naturally get a little irritated. So while I do think it's a pretty clean 3 receiver set of Watson, Reed, Golden in some order, they're definitely taking somebody that's going to be like a 30% snap player that rotates in.
I think, they just always want to keep addressing it. I bet you they're going to be 195 pounds. Savion Williams, also, I bet you is a LaFleur favorite. Just how they use them. You talked about the rushes. He had one of the highest rates of targets or design rushes per snaps in the entire NFL last year. A 3rd-round rookie with a loaded receiver room had the highest touch rate in the entire NFL. And it was like JSN, like CMC. And then, if you're including them as a receiver, and then it's just like Savion Williams. It's like, okay. Okay, if that's how you want to go. Last thing, a little bow on this. Wicks, you talked about Wicks, maybe his growth and everything too. It's hard for me to ever get out what he was at Virginia, whether that's fair or not just because of the number he wore, but just also like he had a lot of drops in college. You could see always the talent. And you mentioned early on how promising it was, like, wow, he really cleaned some stuff up. And then you could just only see the talent. But then there is just, he has just those frustrating moments. And that's why I don't think he's yet to get to that next step. And you already hinted at this, just kind of reiterating what you're saying. But the thing is like, he's good. Like there's enough talent there. Like there's still more room to work with. It's just more about some of those consistency things, and maybe just straight reps where you're not rotating helps out. So just kind of want to mention that too. It's like that. The flashes are there with Wicks. Like he's an interesting player. And so again, that just kind of makes sense. But hopefully Tucker Kraft comes back nice and healthy, because that'll help out a lot of things in Green Bay. All right, let's get to this class though. You talked about Packers might be targeting these guys. We're going to start with the kind of the consensus top 6, as I'll put it. Not to say these guys are all in the same tier. There's some minor differences. I'm going to guess that Matt and I have some differences as well, but also just when kind of relating it to the consensus. But the top 6 that we'll kind of start this show off with, we'll start with Carnell Tate, Ohio State receiver, the next in line guy, and then we'll get into Micaiah Lemon, Jordan Tyson, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston, and Omar Cooper Jr. But we'll get to them in a sec. We'll start with Mr. Tate, who I would actually even say might be the unanimous number 1 receiver. And even before I get into like stack rankings of what I think, he's my number 1 guy for this class. But Matt, this is your fastball. This is your forte. We've talked a little bit about Carnell Tate. What did you like about him? Where do you stack him up? Where do you compare him maybe to guys that you've ranked in the past? Just let's give us your Carnell Tate's thoughts.
Yeah, Carnell Tate is also my wide receiver one. I think you're right. It's kind of becoming almost a unanimous thing. If you look at like the consensus board, which is aggregated from a bunch of different rankings, mock draft databases, all that type of stuff, there's kind of a little bit of a separation, even gaining from Tate even to the next guys. And I still view him in the same tier as a couple other players that we'll talk about here, but I do have him as the wide receiver one because, and this has been my line with him all along, he fits all 32 NFL offenses. Whether you want to live in like a condensed world when you're playing 2 tight ends or whatever, or you're more spread and shred, because of the rules of the game and the way the sport works, everybody still needs somebody to line up outside on the line of scrimmage and run the vertical route tree. And that is what Carnell Tate does to a really high degree. He has the 7th best success rate versus man coverage of any prospect I've charted since the 2021 class. He really does eat up man coverage, especially on those vertical routes. Like, he's a long strider. Yes. He's really technically precise. He has a massive catch radius. I've said this a lot about him too. He's the most aesthetically pleasing player to watch catch the football that I can remember in the last few draft classes, because he's always right and tight on the details in terms of tracking, timing. Plus, he just always plays like, this is the thing with like Marvin Harrison. As much as you like Marvin Harrison Jr., he would still have times where he'd clap at the ball, or he'd like, and he's gotten bad about this in the NFL, where he like needlessly underhand attacks passes or things like that. Tate is always arms extended, away from the frame, maximizing his catch radius. Like, I was talking about this with Dane Brugler yesterday on the fantasy forecast for Mock Draft Monday. That even like increases his catch radius to like the out of bounds. Like, he will pluck passes away out of bounds on the sideline and bring them back into frame. So he just is a really, really good player. In terms of like, yes, like this is something I do on my site, is I have a stacked board that goes back since the 2021 class, because that's when I launched the website. In terms of where I stack him up, like, yeah, I have him right there with Tetero McMillan from last year's class. So like, if that's a guy that McMillan went 8th overall, I would be very comfortable taking Tate in the top 10 of what I think is a weaker class this year.
That's the thing, is like how we even started. We say he's an unanimous one. You say he's aesthetically pleasing to watch. He's just clean. Like, it's like my biggest knock maybe is not even the 40 time, because I watched this guy on film take the top off the defense easily. Like, that's the thing too. It's like, oh yeah, there's some of that Devontae Smith movement. Speaking of Devontae Smith, where it's like, even if he isn't, I'm not going to bet this guy runs a 4.3. They eat up ground with their strides. They got those kind of long strides, and it's so fluid. It's just kind of, the game speed's different than the time speed. It really is. And I know that's a kind of a classic cliche, but it really is. The hand size shows up with his ball skills. I mean, he's got over 10-inch hands, and that he snags the football. Like, it's not catching the football. He goes out and grabs it. And he's comfortable catching it as well. It's the guy I've kind of comparing him to is like, this is the high end stuff. Whenever I mostly do these comparisons, that's Reggie Wayne, where I think he's an outside guy. He's a clean route runner. He's not a burner. He's more of I won't even say a technician, but just a clean guy, a clean route runner. I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, this guy is like teach tape and everything. I'm not showing him like, JSN. I would hold in a higher esteem than that maybe. But man, just like, there's not a lot of knocks I have with him other than maybe not ideal size, but those big hands, he plays big because of the catching range. It's notable. I have to say it again. He's valid at all 3 levels, even without that blazing speed, because he's a better athlete, a football player, than maybe just a true track athlete. And really, I got to talk to him. I have an interview with him coming out soon. And I just even asked, like, what's kind of your favorite thing? I kind of stole one of your questions. Like, what's your favorite route, or what do you think you bring to an offense, kind of thing? And he was like, oh, I can take the top off the defense, those post routes. And I was like, oh yeah, I'm sure they are. And even I shared the outline. I'm not sure if we can pull it up now, but his target map, his heat map is hilarious, because it's just like, he literally has a cap on top of his targets. You can see it on the YouTube show here. Like, there it is, just all there above 30 yards, just like a nice little hat on his catches right there. And you don't really see that too often. Not a lot over the middle, if you notice, with Julian saying. But anyways, but a lot to the outside here. You see those sideline catches just with these dots. I think he's great on those little quick out routes, stick routes, the underneath stuff. He can work. You find with him working from the slot as well? I felt very comfortable with him there.
Yeah, I think he can play all three receiver positions. Like he can definitely, there are times where he moves in off ball and into the slot and runs those like quick out routes is definitely a strength of his game.
Scheme proof, like you put it, scheme proof. Like he is a fit for everybody. I think he's going to be an alpha 1, top 5, top 6 guy? Probably not, but more like a very good player and maybe highest end number 2 or the Devontae Smith kind of tier that you and I talk about all the time, where it's like, this guy really could be a 1. But like, but maybe he's just a super 2 and maybe a 1B kind of thing. But I don't know, man. This is a skill set, a mindset. I think he's a smart player. He's tough. It's pretty easy to project him, even if, again, he doesn't have maybe those ideal size, ideal speed. He has a lot of good, though, and a lot of really great to his play style. So I think he's 1-1 for both of us. I'm trying to figure out on my final big board exactly where we put him. He'll probably end up that 9-10 range. And I'm he was probably going to be his first receiver off the board, and I wouldn't be shocked. And I wouldn't be like, oh, really? Because he's going to fit a lot of ecosystems very, very well. Let's get to the next guy. I think this is one of the more interesting players, I think, of this, not only just this receiver group, but really this class. This is USC wide receiver Mekhi Lemon. Extremely productive, worked a lot from the slot in Lincoln Riley's offense. Really just did not test as far as just doing some speed stuff, but he did as pro day, but really just had some great ball skills. I think that's really the standout attribute with him is his ball skills, a smooth route runner, also a nice feisty blocker. I will say that this guy is willing to scrap it and get in there. So even if he's not what I call a power slot, he is a kind of the but the middle point between your classic slots, which in modern NFL is like Josh Downs, and maybe your true power 210 pounder slots like a Pat Bryant, or that sort, something of that sort. So kind of that middle ground between those two. But Mekhi Lemon, very curious what you think. I know some inklings, but what did you think about him and your player profile, your reception perception, charting, and all that good stuff, Matt Harmon?
Yeah, funny enough, I mean, it's funny that you say like the blurs the line, or he's right in the middle of, is he a big slot, power slot, or is he kind of the traditional slot? Yeah. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, who he compares himself to and everybody compares him to, he is kind of that player in the NFL right now. He's like 6 foot, 200 pounds. So is he a big slot, or is he just the traditional slot? Lemon is a little bit smaller than St. Brown, but by like negligible amounts here necessarily. So it's kind of funny to kind of put him in that bucket there. But yeah, I really, really like this player, and it wouldn't surprise me if he goes to the right ecosystem, which put a pin in that. We'll have to discuss like what that ecosystem is, if he becomes the most productive wide receiver of this draft class. But he does have to go to the right spot, and because he is definitely a guy that I think will be slot mostly. In my opinion, I don't think he needs to be slot only. It was about 69% snaps in the slot, 3.4% snaps in the backfield in the games that I charted for him this past year, which if you look at like round 1 wide receivers who have been slot heavy players since the 2021 class, Emeka Ibuka had a higher slot rate in the games I charted. JSN had a higher slot rate in the games I charted. Traylon Burks was right about even. Kadarius Toney was 77%. And if we're talking about where does Lemon fall on the scale of those 4 guys, like there's Toney and Burks over here, like guys who couldn't really run routes, and then there's Ibuka and JSN. Like he's definitely much more towards that level of prospect. I think he's a better prospect than Ibuka was last year, and I liked Ibuka, but he's slightly lower in my stacked ranks than a guy like JSN, who was very, 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 very top of what I'd call like a tier 2 wide receiver, which is where all these guys exist in this class to me, like the players we're talking about right now, the Tates and the Mekhi Lemons and stuff like that. But I think Lemon's really good. Zone coverage, spatial awareness is awesome for him. I do think you see him beat man coverage in terms of the intermediate area, which I think is, again, that's enough for him to play Z receiver in 2 receiver sets, and then obviously kick into the slot for the vast majority of his plays. You mentioned, it's funny, like the whole thing at the combine about his interviews and like lack of effort during the drills. I was like, you watch him play, like he's the highest effort player and the smartest player on the field every single time. So it's like, I don't really know what to do with any of that stuff. Because again, just from what you see from him, high effort, high intelligent player. awesome at the catch point. Look, everybody's talked about it. Go back and watch the Iowa game. Just littered with not just impressive route wins, but high degree of difficulty catches. Him and Tate are like neck and neck for who's got the best hands in this draft class, which is why, again, wide receiver. That's why these guys are going pretty high in the draft. But yeah, I really like this player, and I have found some of the, I don't know, I'm curious to hear what you think about him overall. I just think right now he is right in that kind of meta of the evolving archetype of what is it, like what can be the number one receiver in today's offenses. Like, again, he's got to go to the right spot, but he's coming into the league at the right time. There's no doubt about that.
I think he won me over a little bit with the non-targets in the weirdest way. And again, that's not just the blocking, but I got to see some stuff where he wasn't getting the ball and how he was just winning against, because I would say maybe just to kind of counter what you're saying, and I like him a lot. It's just how high I can get with maybe the archetype. And that's what he's a really curious one for me, because there's stuff that's screaming at me on both sides. I love his ball skills. I love that he's willing to scrap. I think he's a good route runner. I think he can, he's just a fluid mover. I don't know how else to describe it. Maybe not the twitchiest guy I've ever seen, but fluid. And then just know it kind of, I see the JSN stuff where people are like, oh yeah, he moves like JSN. It's like, okay, I get what they're trying to say there, but it's not, not to the same extent. It's just that the other side is screaming me, and this is more the scouting traits side is screaming to me, or tool side is lack of length, maybe that lack of high-end athleticism. And if a guy that relies on ball skills and craftiness, that maybe gives me a little, he might be kind of like the old guy at the Y. That kind of maybe gives me some issues that it's like, well, this is how he has to win. All right, can he do that without the lack of elite stuff or even very good stuff? Now, Amon-Ra St. Brown is that kind of guy that ran, what did he run, a 4.6, 4.59? But Amon-Ra St. Brown probably has 10 pounds on lemon and was a son of a world-class bodybuilder. So that too is like, he was so strong. And if anyone sound like I sound confused when I talk about him, I'm battling on lemon. I'm trying to figure out how I feel about him, because I have so much that I like, and then so much that's also screaming at me like, this guy's more of a super role player than a guy that's a 1, or even maybe, it could be a 2, obviously. But I just think it's more like, you kind of mentioned his landing spot matters, and that's maybe why I knock him more. For a receiver, just in my grading, like, this is why I have a guy like Emeka Egbuka higher than the last year. And we talked about this a lot, but I had Ted McMillan pretty high overall last year, and just overall my receiver grading. Guys that fit into a lot of offenses are going to do it more for me. Talked about that with Tate. Lemon has to be specific, and I think that is why the specificity, I should use words that I can actually say, is making something that's kind of just like not letting me get over the top with him. And that's not to say bad player that I don't like him. It's just some of those tools and traits are maybe just not what I want for a guy I'm taking top 20. If he goes in the 20s, or even, God forbid, the 30s, because if you say that, people will yell at you, way more comfortable with him there, with another guy to counter with him. But if you drop him in top 15 and he's your ace, or you expected to be your ace, that's where I get a little scared. There's certain, but that's, having said that, there's a lot of teams with already some good talent at receiver or pass catchers that I'm a little more comfortable with it. And again, the in-between stuff makes me more comfortable that even though what I do think is how you're putting it, not slot only, but slot majority, the fact he's willing to do the dirty work stuff, that's why he'll be better than like a guy like Josh Downs, who I both really like. Downs has to be a route runner. They have to RPO him because he can't block. Lemon can at least do the in-between stuff to make him more valid to be on the field for 50-something snaps. So he'll end up probably, I don't know, I want to wait to the end to maybe like stack these guys. I probably have him a little lower than you, but that's not to say I hate him or anything. Like, I really do like him. It's just, I'm just also trying to be realistic with maybe some of this tool stuff that he has or doesn't have maybe.
Yeah, I think you're caught somewhere between traditional dogma of the wide receiver position, which, it is what it is, Nate. It's in your blood. And then there's that part of it. And I also think the other difficulty is just when you're scouting for theoretically all 32 teams, because I think we could both agree if a team like if a team like the Rams turns in the card at 13 for Mekhi Lemon, you'll probably be like, well, they know what to do with this archetype of wide receiver. Yeah. They've done it over and over again. It's like, so that's the difficulty of trying. And sometimes, like, in the fantasy space, I just had a show with JJ Zacharyson on his pod yesterday. We were talking that like in the fantasy space, like a big indicator and a big input in a lot of these predictive models is draft capital, just like literally how high they go in the draft. And a lot of times like that almost kind of answers questions for you in a way. And like, obviously this isn't something that I like bring into my prospecting and stuff like that. But I say this a lot for guys like Drake London and Tedero McMillan, when, on the internet, it's like, well, these guys don't separate. It's like, okay, well, if they can't separate, they're not going 8th overall in the freaking draft. Like they're not being talked about in that range. They're going to go in like, nobody's considering them there. And I think that's kind of the same thing for these guys. Like, well, is he going to be a Josh Downs or a Jaden Reed? Like the guys who get stuck in that slot only pigeonholed role. Well, if a team takes them in the top 15, they don't view him that way. No. So it's like sometimes what they do, like what the team tells us will tell us a lot. So I think with Lemon, I get where you're coming from. And it's just one of those things where I might go one way or another, depending on the team. That takes him. So like a week plus from now, we'll have a better sense of what his career outlook is going to look like. I just think this type of wide receiver is a lot more valid for high end production than it was in 2017 or whatever. But just real quick before we move off Lemon, I just want to say the one thing about the Amon-Ra St. Brown comp. When people say the Amon-Ra St. Brown comp, can somebody tell me like which Amon-Ra St. Brown are you talking about? Are you talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown his rookie year? Or are you talking about him in his fourth and, like his most recent seasons? Because those are two very different players. Okay. Like I know we're doing stylistic comps, but that's a guy that like how he played last year is not how he played in the back half of his rookie year, or even in his second year. So like it's just something to remember when we're talking about like comparisons and we're throwing these things out there.
I'm glad you put it though, that this play style, body type, whatever you want to put it, is way more valid for more offenses too though. And that's not, and again, that's why I'm trying to, and I know it's more of people think it's a shtick or anything, but really, because it's my evaluation, the fact he is willing and able to do the dirty work stuff, that really helps me as far as an evaluator. Because if he becomes just like, oh no, you're just a route runner from the slot, it's like, oh, how many plays are you affecting that way? Now there's just, I don't know, there's just a lot more. So you're just talking about the St. Brown, like how they're getting used and everything, because that's also valid too. And that's why he was able to get onto the field early, because he was willing to do the dirty work stuff. And then they're like, man, this guy's, let's run another crossing route to him, because no one's keeping up with him. Because that's, I mean, it's really, that's what happens. And then your role gets expanded, you earn your role, and you get more and more. And I think that's what's helping me with Lemon, because originally I was like, what is everyone doing right now? And I watched more and I'm like, okay, you grew on me. And he's going to end up like in the 20s on my big board, just overall. But I just do think that there's not as much bust factor maybe as I maybe originally thought with him. Like I do think he is a lot safer than maybe I had considered even like 3-4 months ago. And I think it's the which is so random. It's not the high end stuff he does, it's the in between stuff he does. So I think you and I kind of like painting a picture, I think, of pretty nice about Lemon right now. Like I think anyone listening to this kind of understands what he is. It's like, this is a productive guy. He might have some questions, but man, he does a lot of nice things and stuff that coaches like to have. First downs are really fun. And I think Lemon's going to, if he gets into a ready ecosystem, could be a guy that racks up a lot of first downs. Let's get to the next guy. Another guy I'm very curious. A guy I first mentioned to him, like to you in like November, because I was like, I think you might like him, but I'm very curious. And this is Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. Twitchy, sometimes to his own detriment. Loose as a route runner, sometimes to his own detriment.
Sometimes to his own detriment.
I think you had an amazing comparison, which I'll give you the floor on. But just a little background. Arizona State, he transferred from Colorado. I would say even before we get into his play style stuff, his number one kind of knock is his medical history. He's had several injuries. 2025, he missed time with a hamstring. He missed spring ball with an ankle injury. 2024, he broke his left collarbone at the end of the season. And in 2022, he tore his ACL, PCL, and MCL in his left knee, forced him to miss some time in 2023. Not quite the full Sean Livingston injury, but close to a knee explosion. But Jordan Tyson, Arizona State, what'd you think about him, Matt?
My player comparison was Amari Cooper, which depending on the kind of, that's a little bit of a Rorschach test type comparison.
It depends on what you think of Amari Cooper in your head. That's like,
exactly. And the reason that I came down on that comparison is really two things. One, Cooper was a very volatile player. Like the highs were highs. I think the lows were lows. Anybody who ever had Amari Cooper in fantasy, like even when he was on good teams, you knew that there were like these big up and downs. And I thought the film really reflected those up and downs as well. And with Cooper too, like I thought he always got really overrated as a route runner because he was one of those like quick twitch, fluid movers. And people, if you watch like the 10 best routes of that guy doing those things, you're gonna be like, this is the best route runner in the league. I'm like, well, okay, watch the other however many routes you got to go through. I think there's a lot more inconsistencies there. And I've definitely seen the same 10 routes of Jordan Tyson thrown out on social media and be like, how you tell me this guy's not the wide receiver one in the class? I'm like, yeah, it was impressive when I saw it last week from a different account and the week before that and everything like that. And that's the thing with Tyson. Like same thing with Amari Cooper. Like the highs are really high. I think that Tyson could end up being the best receiver from this draft class. I think that is very, very valid for Jordan Tyson.
I agree.
But I also think that there's some things he's got to work on. Like he's the number one player in terms of success rate versus zone coverage that I've charted in the class. Like his success rate versus zone is really, really good because I think when he's not in these combative one-on-one kind of isolated situations, he can really snap off routes and create a ton of separation. But I think he struggles against press. Success rate versus press is pretty low. He gets tackled on first down. He gets tackled on first contact all the time. And he's like kind of up and down as a contested catch receiver too. Again, the impressive wins are really impressive and he's got really good body control in the air. But this is something I noticed about him, Nate, and I was so hyped up to share this with you because I think you'll nerd out on this. Like I nerd out on this type of stuff. This is up Nate Tice's alley. Plus, shout out to our friends at NFL IQ. I used their tool to look this up because I was like, there's no way I'm be able to. I would spend hours trying to find this information. So yeah, that's a free freaking plug for NFL IQ. Not even in the segment here. Jordan Tyson has 11th percentile arm length according to Mock Draftable. And this has been something I have not been able to get out of my head when watching him. I'm like, I can tell he's got small arms and he's got a 6'2", 200 plus pounds. Yeah. I was like, that's like you start looking at the historical database of guys that have these 11th percentile or lower arms. It's a lot of little tiny fellas. Right.
Wan'Dale Robinsons.
And so, yeah, Wan'Dale Robinsons, all those type of guys. So I asked NFL IQ, I'm like, how many receivers have there been that are over 6 feet and over 200 pounds with 30 and a quarter inch or shorter arms? So that's, again, look, the percentile there kind of cut off. It found 10. These are the 10 guys. Okay. Dylan Bell, who's in this year's class. Don't have a report on him. Jordan Tyson, Noel Thomas, Nelson Spruce, Ryan Whalen, Chris Denny, Chris Collins, Kerry Colbert, shout out to Panthers, not so legend, Kerry Colbert, Talman Gardner, don't know who that is, and Anquan Bolden. It's like a classic list of like, who are these guys? And then that's an awesome player. So I only bring up
like 30 pounds heavier than Jordan Tyson.
Yeah. Well, when he came into the league, he was 6 feet 5/8 and 216 pounds, but yeah, still much denser figure than Jordan Tyson is. But anyways, I just thought that was I've been obsessing about this for months, so I'm glad that I finally got an answer to that question about how bizarre of a frame that is. And I only bring it up because I think that does show up, like the lack of length at the catch point. I think shows up, the lack of length against press coverage. I think shows up for him. So I think he is a good player with, again, really high impressive traits and skills and things of that nature. I would not want him to be my X receiver. I want him to be used as a movement Z receiver. Get him away from press, get him on some of these in breakers in the intermediate area, because his routes in the intermediate area are excellent when he gets a free release. Excellent stuff. And I think that was very, very similar of Amari Cooper when he was with the Cowboys. So again, that's to bring it all back around. That's why I ultimately settled on that comparison.
No, I love that comparison. Like, because that's, once you said it, it was like, yep, there it is. Like for me, and I coached Amari for 2 years with the Raiders.
Yeah.
And that was something that was so maybe frustrating with him, was that he thinks he's open and he's quick on his route. He runs a slant. And this is something I try to emphasize all the time, if usually in like a video cut up or something, is timing of plays really matters, especially in the NFL. Like a drop and a protection and the route are all tied together as far as the timing. So if you think Jerry Jeudy, I think, is the current bad example of this.
Yes. Yes.
Where it's a slant is your second outside foot. It hits the floor, then you cut in for a slant. Amari at times would juke at the line and then cut in like with no steps because he thinks, oh, I beat the press. Now I got to get inside. And it's like, well, you got to get your depth and you're already too quick.
Yep.
Like, because he just thinks he's open. Or a stop route on the outside is 10 to 12 yards. And then they feel the press and they feel like they got that little separation. They break the route at 8 yards. And that is just, it's a hard living. You know, the guy that got away with it for years, it was Odell Beckham. It could be like this at times too. And even with the Rams, it was pretty funny to see Stafford just go, whatever, he's talented enough. I'm not going to yell at him, because Odell would run a dig route. I know this just because I know how it's taught. It would be like 4 yards short. And they're just like, well, he's open, and Stafford found him the ball, you know, when he was with that little stint with the Rams. But those are a little worrisome for me, because that's hard to break, because that's how guys have won their whole life, especially a guy with Amari who was drafted so high and was a dude since high school. You know, so it's like, all right, I've already done this my whole life. You're going to tell me I'm wrong now? It's like, well, yeah, you are, because now you have to do it on NFL timing. There's a story when I was with the Falcons. Kyle Shanahan comes in, he's talking about receivers, and he's talking about, or just each position. All right, here's tight ends, here are the traits I like. All right, here's receivers. He showed clips of Pierre Garçon. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. Like, Pierre Garçon's not really the first name that comes to mind as maybe like Teach Tate. But he said that when they had Pierre, he first got there from Indy, was that he almost was too deep on all of his routes. So say it was a comeback route drawn up for 18 yards. He was getting 19 or 20. And they're like, hey, you just get to 18 and you're good. It's because Peyton was such a stickler on all the details, Peyton Manning, that he's like, you better freaking get to 18. I don't even want you at 18. You're getting to 20 to make sure that you get your depth. And he got so ingrained and so well trained in doing that it's like, okay, I got to get my depth. But just to kind of emphasize what an important detail it is, especially for quarterbacks. I'm so glad too you brought up even just like Amari, because this is something we figured out in Oakland too late probably, was that Michael Crabtree was our Z. And Amari was our X, because we're like, well, we draft a guy top 10. He better be our X. And then we figured out in 2017, he was better as a Z and as an off-ball guy, and really should have been just a super slot. Like, really, that's what he should have been.
That's so fun. This is exactly what I was writing about him at the time. It's so fun. I was like, this guy should be, they got to move him to Z. And Gruden did it for the last little bit there. And then they traded him mid-season that year. And then the Cowboys, like people gave the Cowboys a lot of credit. Like, oh, they moved Amari Cooper to Z and it changed his career. It's like, actually, they started doing it a little bit there in Oakland before they traded him away. Yes. And yeah, it's just like it changed. That's why this stuff matters so much. When I talk about like, okay, if you deploy this guy this way, like, yeah, I think Tyson, if he goes to a team and they view him as the X because he's 6'2", 200 plus pounds, whatever, like, oh yeah, I don't love that. And yeah, like it really matters. Every quarterback is different, right? Every quarterback wants different things. And yeah, I think the like tagline of these type of guys, the Tysons, the Coopers, and Judy's like the really exaggerated version of this, but there's just like no tempo in their routes. They really lack tempo as a route runner. And that is, whereas Crabtree, yeah, he was like a great technician. He was always, the timing between him and Derek Carr, the chemistry, like was really good between those guys. Like he would outproduce Amari Cooper, out-target Amari Cooper for a lot of those years. So yeah, it really matters to finding the right fit for a guy like this. So if he goes to one of these teams, views him as that movement Z, I think that there's a lot of ways that you can get some of the, and again, you can coach some of this stuff out of him too, but like you said, there's no guarantee that happens.
Yeah, some guys just never do it. Like they don't. Some guys do. Like it is like you say, it's coachable, but some guys get drafted so high, and that's what's hard sometimes. And not every player is the same. Like I'm not saying Jordan's like, oh, he's not going to do it. The one game that we finally moved Amari to Z, and we started motioning him to the slot. It was against the Chiefs on a Thursday night game, and we were in the doldrums in Oakland that year. And it was Thursday night. It was I want to say it was week 7. And we moved him to Z and we ran Y cross like 100 times. And Amari finished with 19 targets, 11 catches, 210 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And it was one of those, maybe we should have done this a little earlier before we were like, well, that was before, actually, that was probably when Mark Davis was meeting with Gruden already, so we were done. You know what's funny about the arm length thing is Jordan Tyson's brother is a freaking NBA basketball player, Jalen Tyson, for the Cavs. So you'd think that he'd have some length, and apparently not. Apparently he's got the JJ Redick arms, like shorter than his height with the wingspan. No, that really just to kind of cap it with my thoughts on Tyson. You nailed it. Like, and I do like him. Like how you even started it. If he ends up the best receiver of this class, I would not be shocked. I really wouldn't, because he has some movement that's hard to teach, the twitchiness and everything. But there's just so much refinement and details, plus the injury history, that kind of like just only caps me of how high I can get with him. But I do like him. Like if midseason, he was my receiver 1, and I kind of cooled on him as the rest of the season went along, because I thought he was going to get a little bit better. And other guys kind of overtook him for me. We'll get to the rankings in a sec. Last little thing, I just maybe tie in Lemon and Tyson. Who did you have issues with? You said a little bit with Tyson against press. Did you have any issues with Lemon against press? Because that was one thing that another little thing maybe that knocked him for me, was that I thought press kind of gave him some issues.
Yeah. Like his press success rate is better, Mekhi Lemon, than Jordan Tyson, but he's also lining up mostly in the slot. So there is something there, and it's not to the level of like animal. JSN was another guy that like very small sample size against press coverage, but his press success rate was elite, which was why I was like, okay. Yeah. Top of that tier, like so I like JSN better as a prospect than Mekhi Lemon. JSN should not have been bucketed with those other 3 dudes that he went in the first round with that year, but that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, I know. Even JSN too. It's like when I watched his outside stuff and looked at his stats, I'm like, man, I kind of underrated you on the outside. And I was like, whoa, did I? Yeah. Because look what he became. And I was a guy that really liked JSN, but I was like, he's become even better than I ever even envisioned. Maybe not so much for you, but let's get to the next guy. Another guy I know, spoilers, that you've hinted I like it a little bit. This is Texas A&M wide receiver Casey Concepcion, and I another guy I also like, twitchy. I think he's got ball skills. He was a transfer from NC State, where he was used kind of I would say a hybrid player. I'm not going to say gadget full out, but got a lot of rushes, got touches. He's got return ability. Also, this year, if you watched any of his play with Texas A&M, some of the worst quarterback play you'll watch with a high-end receiver prospect in some time. Oh my goodness. Oh, I felt bad for him. Like what was going on there. Some of those throws, I'm like, man, just clean up your footwork. God, I just want to talk to some of these guys and just like calm down. But anyways, Concepcion though, I know you talked about him. We talked about him at the combine, I think at first. And you're like, you're playing maybe just a little, you're floating some stuff out there. Like, hey, this guy's grabbing my attention. But now that you've written him up, maybe done a little more of a deep dive, how'd you end up on Concepcion?
Yeah, he's awesome. He's my guy this year. I have him second. I have him ranked second in the class behind Tate. I would fully move, if he did not have the drop issues, I would fully like green light him to be a tier 1 receiver prospect. That's how high I am on this guy.
That's the thing that just I just can't get there with it. We'll get there.
We'll get to because the thing is, like, how many guys are like truly fall out of the league because they drop the football too much? Usually the guys that do, it's because they don't do anything else worth living through the drop problems with. I mean, even a guy like, and the difference between, and that's the thing with Casey Concepcion is that he just checks every other box. Like anything else you want a wide receiver to do, he does it. 6 foot, 196 pounds. And this guy smokes press coverage on the outside. 92nd percentile success rate versus man. It's the best in the class. I think he is both the best separator and the best route runner in the class. And there's a difference between that. We just talked about like the difference between separation and route running. Even a guy like Travis Hunter, who I loved as a prospect as a wide receiver last year, he was a great separator, but wasn't always a great route runner. And obviously you saw some of the adjustment period early on in the NFL, while obviously playing two friggin' positions in the whole deal. So like he's a whole totally like different thing. But for Concepcion, I think he blends both great separation and great like technical route running, which is really impressive for a guy that this was his first year playing mostly on the perimeter. And he was a guy that had 40 rush attempts 2 years ago in college football. So like, the growth on him is really impressive. again, the route running is great. The ability in space with the ball in his hands. He can win at all three levels. He can play inside out. Like, I certainly do not think he is a slot only player. His release work off the line of scrimmage against press coverage is way too good. I think he could play all three spots. You've already got reps of him at Texas A&M this past year. Dynamic pre-snap motion at the snap work, which is what these teams want this type of player to be doing right now. So I think he's a weapon and a real deal receiver. And the tough part about him with the drops is, there's no question, like, he drops the football too much, and it's a combination of what I would call like shoddy work technically at the catch point, because he kind of claps at the ball and he also thinks about what he's going to do before he actually catches the ball sometimes, which is a bad habit you got to work yourself out of. But unlike a guy in Dontayvion Wicks, who we talked about earlier, who has issues dropping the football and in the contested catch game, like, there are plenty of plays you can watch of KC Concepcion, like contested, making plays above the rim, fully extending for the football. So he's almost kind of one of those frustrating guys that drops the easy ones and makes the spectacular ones, which,
yes,
in one way it's like, that's super annoying, but it also gives you hope that, like, it's not a tracking and like hand-eye coordination issue, which is what it is for a lot of these guys.
Neighbors was kind of like that at times, where he would make these incredible catches and then he would drop. I think he didn't have as many frustrating drops as Concepcion, but he would have that where he would make ridiculous sideline catch, and the next one he would just drop this like easy one to his chest, and you're like,
and he did that in his first year in the NFL. he did, and he said, he's like, who can, which by the way is like so after my own heart, because this is like, if you really want me to be honest, like, this is how I kind of feel about drops too. He's like, oh, who cares if I drop the football, just throw it to me again. Like, just throw it to the guy again. Like, you'll work him out of it. And that's what Neighbors said after his rookie year, when he did drop the football too much.
It's like me sometimes with quarterback evaluations, like, oh yeah, he threw 2 picks in that game. I'm like, yeah, and he ripped off 12 explosives. Who cares? Like, you gotta risk it for the biscuit, baby. And
that's the thing about the drops. Like, it's not like you're turning the football over. You don't have to. Oh, you dropped the football. You got to give it to the other team. It's like, a fumble or interception. That's a whole different thing. But I'm saying this as, obviously lead lobbyist for big receiver. So whatever.
Well, speaking of big receiver, he weighed in more than I thought he would, and that helped me out too with him, where I was like, okay, you're good. I can rank you a little higher than I can rank you as high as I want to rank you. He's either receiver 3 or 4 for me. My big board's not due until tomorrow morning, but he's either 3 or 4 for me. But I still have to figure it out, because I really like him. It actually helped me a lot when you're like, I like him too, and I'm like, okay, good. Stat wise, he's incredible. Like, that's the thing, is this guy was more. I hate to use the word gadgety, but he used like a gadget guy early on. So the fact, like you said, that he's valid on the outside, he's got some juice on the outside as a route runner. And I think his core strength, or maybe his play strength, is actually notable. Like, it's that I bet you he's strong in the weight room, because you can see the explosiveness, but also just how he fights through stuff. And that comes up with catching the ball, but also just working through like handsy DBs. Like, it doesn't really affect him much, especially on the outside. Like, he goes vertical. These guys are trying to get their hands on him. He's just fighting right through it. Doesn't slow down whatsoever. And he's not the biggest guy that usually those are the guys that can do that. We're going to get to one right in a second. But so that's really, I think, notable. Like, the fact that it helps me and my brain translate him to the NFL. Super explosive. He was 96th percentile in first downs per route last year among receivers with, there's 366 receivers with 200 more routes than FBS last year. 92nd percentile in explosives. Like, this guy was a first down machine, 96th percentile on first downs or touchdowns per reception. Like, so all those stats are great. It's just the drops is the big knock, because I do think you mentioned it. I'm glad you said it though, but the route running is good, and I think he's already improved in that, which makes me more optimistic that there's even a little bit more to tap into, which is exciting. So you got a guy, and I think the floor is higher with him because, okay, maybe, all right, say in a worst case or a lesser outcome, all right, this guy's not an outside guy. We have to move him around a bunch. All right, well, he's a returner, and I can dial up some gadget plays for him. So at worst, I think his floor is on auxiliary number 3. That's great. As opposed to outright bust, this guy's unusable because he's an outside stiff and now we can't use him. So why I'm saying that is that even if he doesn't grow, or if some of the blemishes show up more, the drops are frustrating, okay, all this stuff, yada, yada, I do still think that his floor is a little bit higher than maybe you would assume with a guy that can be described as quote unquote gadgety, because there's more real receiver to him and he can affect the game more than just the receiver stuff. Like I said, the returner stuff and everything else, like that matters. It really does. And I think that's why he just keeps growing for me. And I mean, there's some cool catches along the sidelines with him where he's winning vertically and he's contorting for the ball. That's why, again, I'm bringing up that Neighbors thing where he's contorting for the ball. And that's real. That's the stuff that translates, because that's how catches are in the NFL. And then he's got juice with the ball in his hands. So if you can't tell, I think we both like Casey Concepcion.
Yeah, I love him.
You have him as a 2. I think he's going to have a 3 for me. I really do. Like, just so you know, 3 and 4 for me, it's either Tyson, Concepcion. I'd probably have Lemon after that, because there's another guy I have as my receiver 2, and I think I am the high guy as I look around. That's Denzel Boston.
Yes.
Receiver from Washington, a receiver after my own heart. This is a big, burly, outside ball winner. And these are the guys I always kind of prefer, because I do think that these are harder to find. If you want to kind of get into my thought process with that, I think as we talked about these other guys who I do really like, Tate 190 something, Mekhi Lemon 190 something, Tyson just over 200, Concepcion 190 something, twitchier guys, maybe more craftiness with them and stuff, some yak skills with them, while Denzel is the first guy that, this is an outside ball winner. And I think that kind of leads to my thought process. It's those guys where the denominator is not as big when you're trying to find a guy. I'm going to prefer that a little bit more, because it's a skill set I think is just a little bit harder. Now, before I kind of go over the top of why I have him as receiver 2, let's hear your analysis on Denzel Boston, who I believe you referred to as Mike Evans Jr. or Diet Coke Mike Evans, I think.
Yeah. Diet Coke Mike Evans. Let's reel that back a little bit, because I think the reason, though, I really like Denzel Boston, and even putting the Mike Evans thing out there is Mike Evans is he's the head of the table of that family of wide receivers, the family that I believe Denzel Boston belongs to. And these are bigger guys that are better separators than you think. And I think there's a range of players within this family, within this archetype. And first of all, for Boston, again, he has a lot of great contested catches on his highlight reel, on his resume. You've got to watch more than just the targets and the outcomes.
Yes.
This is a guy that definitely does get open. 80th percentile success rate versus press, 72nd against man coverage. Now, his work against zone, I think, could use some work, particularly down the field. And that just might always be the case as long as he's a perimeter-based player, because he's not going to... I don't know what his 40 is. We don't have a 40 on him. I don't think he can really pull away with that final gear, which is what makes Mike Evans the king of the family there, is because he has that fourth gear, whatever you want to call it, to really pull away from every coverage on the back end there. He's the freak of all freaks. But again, if we're sticking in that family of wide receivers, I think other guys who belong to this family are, Drake London, Tetero McMillan from last year's draft class. I would put Boston somewhere there, and then you kind of get to behind those guys, and then you get to guys like Michael Pitt. Yeah, right. Well, then you get to exactly, but all those guys are big, big badasses. We can dunk on you down the field, but these guys also have really good sink at the hip ability to win on routes in the intermediate area over the middle, which Boston definitely has. I think he can drop his weight and come back to the football, which is nice on stop routes and curl routes and things like that. But you also see the best stuff that he does is probably digs, crossers, slants, stuff like that, which is what McMillan does really well, which is what Drake London does well. It's also what Michael Pittman does well, if we're talking about the lower end of this family of wide receivers. And I think there's a chance that Boston lands somewhere between that, Pittman to McMillan, somewhere in that. Cortland Sutton's kind of in this ball club, but he's a little bit different. He's become this guy where he's more straight line at the beginning of his career. So I think that kind of paints a picture of where Boston is. You probably, again, you this is your type of receiver, so I could get why you'd be the high guy on him. But yeah, it's a family of wide receivers that I think the deployment for guys now is a lot less strict than what it was where, 5-6 years ago, that's our big X receiver. Like now these guys are getting moved around a lot more.
He's not going to, he'll get used more like London McMillan as opposed to Mike Williams when he came into the league, or even T. Higgins originally, where it's just purely outside and vertical routes and all that. No, and also you asked me a few months ago and you're like, oh, do you have him over like T-Mac? No, I was really high on T-Mac. Like T-Mac to me was a hard blue chip receiver. That's just me. While Denzel I have more questions on because you mentioned it, like the yak stuff. Like he's not going to pick up a lot of yards, even though at 6'4", 215, he's returning punts. I don't think he'll be that in the NFL. It's just a nice little note for him in his resume, I think, more than anything. I think he can get kind of simple yards with the ball in his hands, but again, he's not going to make anyone miss. He kind of knows what he is. He just gets north and kind of falls down. It's kind of like Higgins a little bit. No, I really do think, like, I'm glad you brought up Michael Pittman, because that to me is like kind of the middle tier comparison for Boston. It's like, okay, I can see that maybe being more of a likely outcome than maybe the high end stuff. Not to say that's bad. It's just kind of just saying being realistic of what he is. I'm glad you kind of brought up the contested catch thing, because watching him on film is different than watching his highlights. Exactly how you said. Watching him on film, and I see him catching balls where he's easily getting separation, especially on outbreakers. I've noticed like he has a real knack on sail routes and out routes where he can create, maybe it's the head fake or something with his size where he can create a little bit of room there. And is it Ian Hartitz? Hartitz? I always mention him.
Hartitz, yep. Ian Hartitz, yep.
Yeah, great.
I was going to bring this up too. I know where you're going with this. I was going to bring this up too.
Yes, because he had a great tweet. He was just talking about, he said career percentage of targets that were contested and percentage of contested targets that were caught. And you would think Denzel Boston be way up there, contested targets, 25%, something like that. And he's near the bottom, 18%, in between Antonio Williams, who's a slot-only guy for Clemson, just below Carnell Tate, and just above Jordan Tyson at 18%. And then 61% of his contested targets were caught, which is one of the highest rates in this year's class. Carnell Tate leads it at 69%, which is not shocking because of everything we talked about with him. But again, these are the guys that I think it's harder to find this type, a guy that can live as an X, but having said that, he's a great blocker. So you can do some of the power slot stuff with as well. I think he's more physical than T-Mac was as a blocker. Not as much as Drake London. I thought Drake had some good moments, and especially in the NFL. But I just also think too that he's fluid enough that he can be like asked to do all the in breakers at the intermediate level. He can do the outbreakers. He can work underneath and just be a nice big possession guy. And I just do think he has a little bit more downfield juice than he got credit for. I'm not going to say this guy's, he wouldn't break 4.5, I don't think, but he's not a sloth. He's just more of a smooth guy than maybe that explosive, overwhelming, gigantic behemoth that's just a freak. If he was that, he'd be going top 5. And he would be going at a freaking, the all-timers if he had that explosiveness. That's why he is more, to me, a light blue chip, as I would put it, as opposed to maybe a hard blue chip. So I am being realistic about where I have him. He's my receiver too. The comparison, maybe if I want to go high end, is Muhsin Muhammad, former Panther. Muhsin Muhammad. Muhsin was probably the best blocking receiver in the league when he was in the league, him and like Hines Ward. Maybe Denzel is maybe not that. But really just that big burly, he's part of the Cortland Sutton tier as well, archetype, Pittman, like it's that archetype. So that's maybe the other guy that came to mind for me, another guy that ran the 4.5s. But yeah, I just like Boston. He snatches everything. And I just think he's a smooth route runner, even if not overly explosive. And I think he could just be a really nice, if you have a 1, he could be a real good 2. If you have a 1B, he could be a 2A kind of type where he's taking a lot of targets. But yeah, I'm very curious where he ends up, because the team that likes him is going to, like, there's a reason they picked him, if that makes sense. Like, they're not just like, this group, like they want this skill set as opposed to this other group that we're talking about. So yeah, weird. Nate likes the big receiver. I promise, guys. I just hyped up KC Concepcion. I just hyped him up. Like, I'm fine with it. Chris Olave, one of my favorite receivers I've ever scouted. Devontae Smith, one of my favorite receivers I've ever scouted. It's just, these types are harder to find. And if they're fluid enough an athlete and they can catch the ball, I'm gonna buy into this. I really am. Last guy of the top 6, Omar Cooper, Indiana. Omar Cooper Jr., I should say, from Indiana. What do you think about him? Big riser, on Indiana's, I mean, their team, a lot of success. He had a lot of huge moments, came up in the clutch a lot of times, good with the ball in his hands, got good ball skills. Very kind of just, but he's gotten like a lot of steam. I thought I liked him. Apparently everyone loves him. But what'd you think about Omar Cooper, maybe now that you've kind of like tied a bow on your evaluation in your study, Matt?
Yeah, I think we talked about this at the combine. I think there's two reasons I think why he was such a big fast riser. One of them is that he was like one of the final players to declare for this class. And I actually talked to Omar for my show. And this, I'm going to dance around the part of this was an off-camera discussion, so I'm going to kind of dance around it here a little bit. But essentially, when he was deciding whether to go into the NFL draft, there was one, team that he may have talked to that said, "We think you're the 2.0 version of this very, very, very good player." And he was like, "Okay, I probably should declare for the draft." I won't say which team and I won't say which player, but I will say it was not Deebo Samuel, which is the player comparison we have on the screen right now. It wasn't that. Different one. Anyways, so we got some really good feedback from the leagues. He's like, "I think I'm going to go ahead and declare for the NFL draft." So that was why he was kind of a late declare to the draft for one. For two, it's because the Deebo Samuel skill set, like, which I don't fully love the comp, but like whatever. He is just a very easy application skill set to almost any offense. Like everybody could use a guy that we can like has a floor. He can set the floor at like you can spit the ball out to him and he can be a yards after catch monster. And he is a yards after catch monster, which is also something for a lot of evaluators that really sticks in your mind. It's an easy skill set to evaluate. You don't need you could just watch the broadcast and be like, this guy breaks a load of tackles, and that's really great, which Omar Cooper absolutely does. There's no question about that. However, I do think the more I watched him, the more I charted him, the more games I added to his sample, the more his game really grew on me in a couple of different ways. One, I really do like, and again, talking to him about this, hearing like his process about it, he's a really good zone coverage beater, which is what you're going to need to be if you're going to be this receiver. You're going to be a guy who is, I would say, slot mostly. Probably same in Mekhi Lemon, where probably can do some Z stuff, but I have more concerns about Cooper's work against press and on the vertical stem than I would Mekhi Lemon. But yeah, it'll be slot mostly, if not slot, mostly. Anyways, we'll move from there. But zone coverage beater, he really reads things out well. He's got a good process for that. He's awesome on outbreaking routes, specifically like in the 10 to 15 yard range. He will, against man coverage too. And that's the thing, like his ability to beat man coverage is not at the top level of the prospects, like certainly Casey Concepcion or Carnell Tate or whatever, but like it's in a range where I think he can play some outside, specifically like reads leverage really well, will sell that inside break before snapping outside. So a lot of appeal there as a route runner. I think there's a good fundamentals to build on. Good hands. He's super tough. He will absolutely block. He will absolutely go over the middle and take shots and get right back up. So super tough player, super rugged player, very easy to like. I ultimately settled with him in the same tier as guys like Boston and Tyson, which to me is a tier down from the top three receivers in the class. But and for me, that's still like a late first player that you can take, especially in this class where there's not, 20 to 25 first round graded players. For Cooper, he might not be a traditionally first round graded player for a lot of people, but again, the easy applicable skill set, the real plus skills in his arsenal, even if there's some things that he does need to improve on, and he knows he needs to improve on, is something he and I talked about as well. So there's some areas of growth he needs to take, but the floor is pretty well set for a good, solid pro.
Yeah, I think that's how I feel about him too. Like I watched a lot of Indiana this year, not just because they were winning, but because I had some takes on the line with a certain quarterback there. But no, with and you mentioned those out
takes
routes.
Takes that aged well, let's say.
yes. But those are those out routes. That's what Mendoza was a machine on. It doesn't matter who the receiver was. He was automatic on those. And when you watch, say if you're just watching Mendoza, you start just going, man, this Cooper guy's catching everything. God, he just got nailed on that RPO over the middle. He just bounced right up. Oh, man, he just snagged that ball against Penn State in back of the end zone. So he plays big because his ball skills are so good. Like he's got that true kind of like just knows how to adjust to the football. And I do think there's a little stiffness with his movements. Like there's not that like post burst after with the ball. Like he's good with the ball in his hands because of his contact balance and his strength, as opposed to maybe just that overwhelming speed. How that translates to the NFL, I'm not sure. Almost think of him as like a supersized Khalil Shakir. Like maybe that's kind of the comparison I kind of came to, like a big Khalil Shakir. I think his route running, he doesn't tempo. And he's like he doesn't really throttle stuff. It's all just kind of the same speed on everything. It's fine. It's fine. Again, not knocks. I really like him. Again, it's just that I just want to be reasonable on his price, because I do think that
certain routes
I like how you're using the term. Yeah. Like he's not where I just drop him in. Oh yeah, run him everything. He's a guy that deserves 12 targets every single game. It's more like, no, this guy looks like a good secondary guy. Like you even ended it with like, this is like a makeup of like a good solid pro. That's how I feel about him. Just reliable guy, has some nice moments, first down machine, kind of just does everything well, but nothing overwhelming. I see why he gets steam, because his highs are really high. Do you have any, because you mentioned his stats were good versus zone and maybe Boston's were. Do you think there's any quarterback play that affects that as well? Because obviously Mendoza versus Boston played with a smaller quarterback, just like actually T-Mac did at Arizona. And I even looked at it. This is one of the stats. I did this for T-Mac last year because I was trying to illustrate a point, but it's routes that with the time to throw that took 4 or more seconds. No one had a higher rate than Denzel Boston. Over a quarter of his throws took 4 or more seconds of his targets. 26%. The average in FBS last year was 13%. So double the average in FBS. But I just wanted to ask that, like, do you like, because I noticed that sometimes with Boston stuff, and then obviously Mendoza's stats or Cooper's stats were good. So I'm curious if maybe quarterback affected that.
Maybe, but I think the bigger thing is alignment and your route tree. Obviously for a guy like Cooper, you're lining up in the season this past year almost exclusively slot, where Denzel Boston I think is like a sub 14% slot rate in the games I charted. Generally, and again, this is the benefit of having a consistent database for the last 12 years in the NFL, and obviously for prospects a little bit less than that, but still pretty consistent database. Like, you know what the metrics are telling you. With the outside X receivers, you typically are going to see their success rate versus zone be lower. If it's not, that's like a really good signal that they're, especially if they're a high end press man beater, that they're like something really, really, really special, especially once you get to the NFL level. So typically, and it's just because of the coverages that you're facing. Like, it's going to be harder to get open against zone coverage on the boundary than it is when you're working that inside, especially if you're a good, smart player. You're going to find those soft spots over the middle in that area of the field. So I think that's part of it. And again, just the route tree that he's running. He does run a pretty vertical route tree, does Omar Cooper, but again, it's just like in that intermediate area, you can still find that a little bit easier than when you're working from the outside all the way breaking over into the middle of the field. Yeah. You're typically going to find those windows a little more close. It's like a guy like Carnell Tate. He has one of the lower success rate versus zone coverage numbers. Jamar Chase actually back in his, which is funny to remember this, he was 19 years old in his final season of college football, in the season that I charted, which is insane. Freaking 19 years old. And he was so good, but he had a lower success rate versus zone coverage number. It's like, that does not matter as much because he's running against like the true hardest coverages to crack in the NFL. So it's one of those, this is why it's just like, I write up a 800 to 1,000 word report for every player so that you just don't look at one number and be like, oh, that he sucks because of this. Oh, that's it. Everything needs to, everything needs to come together into the context of the player. That's why it's so much like data points I try to give you for the wide receiver position.
I know it's so much context, especially with this position, so much, because just what they're needed to even just affect the game and everything. My last little thing on this, on these 6 guys, just the stats I look at, looking at per route stats, looking at percentile again, just for this past season. If you look at first downs per route, Mekhi Lemon was 99th percentile. Boston was 98th percentile, Tyson 97th percentile, Concepcion 96th percentile, Tate 95th percentile, Omar Cooper 90th percentile. So all these guys stat wise were way up there. You look at explosives per route, Mekhi Lemon 100th percentile. He's top of the top, 8.6%. So that's gains of 15 yards or more, I believe, in this in this example. And then Denzel Boston was actually 98th percentile, second on this little group. Then Tyson 91st, Concepcion 92nd, I'm sorry. And then Carnell Tate 91st, Cooper 81st, which kind of speaks to what you're saying. It was a lot of those kind of short, intermediate, quick hitters, kind of a little different diet than maybe some of these other guys we talked about. All right, we just spent an hour on 6 guys. How would you rank these? I just looked at the time to go like, oh man, how long have we been? 30 minutes? Oh God. How long would you of these? you've kind of hinted at these 6, or you've already hinted at some of your rankings, but how would you officially stack kind of these 6, or where you're at right now a week before the draft?
Yeah, Tate, Concepcion, Lemon, and none of these guys, by the way, are in the same tier as like a Neighbors who we talked about, or even like for me, a Dunze was
Agreed.
in that tier. Marvin Harrison obviously is in that tier. Chase is a play. Like none of those guys are that group. But still, Tate, Concepcion, Lemon, then Tyson got a hedge because he's got that upside. I would go Cooper and Boston, but they're in that order, but they're so to me. I just think that like Cooper has a little bit of a higher floor.
Okay, I have Tate, Boston, and then you gotta ask me tomorrow, but it's either Tyson or Concepcion. Like that, I'm back and forth.
Just
then
do
Lemon,
it.
then
Just come on this journey.
I think I'm gonna go Concepcion because it's just. There's one play he had, man, on the right outside. I'm trying to remember. I wish I wrote it down, but I watched 4 games of him actually, and one of them it was just like an outside go route, and how he fought through the contact. I was like, wow, that was. And then he came down with the ball, and I'm like, wow, those are the traits receiver that matter. Not just I know. It's just he does stuff that's really really cool on top of being able to affect the game in a lot of ways. So. Yeah, I'll probably have him 3, Tyson 4, Lemon 5, and then Cooper 6. All those, again, like we're total agreement here. None of these are guys where I call a purple chip, which is a rare prospect, or a hard blue chip, which is like, oh, you take this guy in the lottery every year, top 10, top 12 every single year. It's kind of that next tier for me. So a lighter blue, hard green, however you want to look at the rainbow, but kind of more guys I'm comfortable drafting in the teens and the 20s than the top 10. But this draft class is filled with a lot of players at a lot of positions. So that's why the range of these guys is going to be all over the place. All right, we are back. It's time for NFL IQ Insights, powered by Amazon Quick. From draft targets to trade scenarios, NFL IQ brings the 2026 NFL Draft to life with real-time data. The built-in AI assistant lets you ask who your team should pick, backed by next-gen stats. Visit NFL.com/IQ to try it out yourself. Now, team needs. We asked NFL's IQ AI assistant for the 4 most glaring team needs in the AFC. That's just one of the conferences, the junior circuit, ahead of the draft next week. And let's break them down. We'll start with the New York Jets. I feel like AI could pick this one up pretty easily with the New York Jets. They got a lot of team needs, but they threw out, and I like this, wide receiver, which has been interesting because I have seen a little bit more receiver interest for the Jets in the first round than I would have maybe given them. But that is where we're going. Receivers, Geno Smith this year. I mean, they have Garrett Wilson at quarterback. They have Garrett Wilson there. They traded for A.D. Mitchell last year. Mason Taylor at tight end as well. And should they use, probably not pick 2, maybe pick 16, Matt, to maybe add a receiver to this group?
Yeah, NFL IQ is not an A.D. Mitchell truther confirmed. I do think that because this wide receiver class is so diverse in the flavors and the skills and the body types, as we've been discussing so far, like they will have someone that I think could complete that room at 16. But if I'm them, I'm probably shopping in the next bucket. Like I think try to hit a position that's maybe more trench based, more defense based in the 16 area, depending on who's on the board. Of course, I wouldn't force receiver at 16 because you can find a similar flavor guy later on in the draft. And I think A.D. Mitchell's good enough to be your number, not on a snap by snap basis, but over the long haul, good enough to be your number 2 receiver while you give Garrett Wilson a boatload of targets, which he certainly deserves.
I'm lockstep with you. I actually like the Garrett Wilson, the A.D. Mitchell splash, whatever you throw in trade that you want to say. I like the Mitchell joining that, and I actually thought he showed a couple moments. Maybe he's it's been inconsistent, but there's a lot of talent there, and I kind of want to ride that out and rather throw in a day 2 guy, and they've got a litany of day 2 picks that they can maybe address receiver, and we're going to talk about a group of those guys in a minute after the next break. And I like including Mason Taylor there. So I think that I'd rather them go defense with the number 2 pick. And then with the 16th pick, I say trenches or corner. Again, they traded away Sauce Gardner. They could be sitting perfect there if one of the top 2 corners, Mansour Delane or Jamal McCoy, is still sitting there. So I'd rather them focus on those spots than, maybe throwing in another receiver. So let's get to the next one here. Cincinnati Bengals. Yeah, you just said defense. All 3 levels. Which I'm like, yeah, you're on to some here. You're on to some here. Their defense has been pretty porous. It picked up a little last year, but now Trey Hendrickson has gone to the Ravens, linebacker, even though they try to splash her with a couple young guys last draft. Still a big need for them. They just need help at all levels. They got some corner play that's actually okay. But what do you think about what the Bengals need in this draft class? Because I agree with this. I think defense.
100%. Yeah. And I mean, they're still kind of hoping some of their young guys come along that they've taken the last few years, but we just got to add more young guys to the mix here. Where they're sitting in the draft is definitely a good spot to grab one of those defensive players too in the first round. And yeah, like really, other than I agree with you, corner, you have DJ Turner, who's coming off a really strong season. Other than that, like, any level of the defense, safety is huge. Edge rusher, anything could be done here to make this defense better. And like, it's about time. Let's get serious about that unit.
It's kind of nice because I'm looking it up just to double check, but I kind of already know what the Bengals picks are because they always just have their own picks. Oh no, they actually have an extra 6 in the 7th this year. But no, they usually just have their own picks. But I think at pick 10, I would address DB. I think they're sitting in a good spot to either get one of those two corners I just mentioned, or Caleb Downs might be there. If they want to get the antithesis to Shamar Stewart and go with Reuben Bain, he might be there. I think their pick at 10 is perfect for a defensive guy. They kind of really is kind of the end of that little tier of players. So they can kind of let others make the decision for them. And I just think at 41, like I like where their O-line's at. I like Brown at running back. I like their pass catchers. They can maybe sprinkle another pass catcher on day 2. But man, I think that pick 41 could be another linebacker because that's a nice spot. Anthony Hill, if he's still there. CJ Allen, if he's still there. Those are two interesting names. There's a bunch of day 2 kind of linebacker types. So I actually think they're sitting okay for what they need, but they just need a decent amount on that defense, which again, went from an atrocity the first 8, 9, 10 weeks to like just pretty bad for the last 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks. So, atrocity to pretty bad is still an improvement, but they need even more improvement on that side of the ball. We go to the next one. Cleveland Browns. We'll stay in Ohio. We'll stay in the AFC North. Receiver. Now, I think the Browns is pretty easy to figure out. They have 2 first-round picks, and it's like receiver and O-line. And so I agree with this one from AI, from NFL IQ. I think receiver just to complement Jerry Jeudy, to be better than Jerry Jeudy, to on top of Harold Fannin, who was a nice find for them in the 3rd round last year from Bowling Green at tight end. Cedric Tillman has had nice moments, but he just can't stay healthy. Concussions is an issue for him, which is a little worrisome. But I do think that receiver makes a lot of sense here, and I totally agree with NFL IQ. One of their 2 picks, and I think they're sitting pretty to address their 2 biggest needs, which to me is left tackle and receiver with their 2 first-round picks. But what'd you think about that one, Matt?
Yeah, if they went Tate 6th overall, would be hard to argue with that. If they waited for Denzel Boston at their 2nd overall pick or first overall pick for first round pick, that wouldn't be too bad either. They could even trade down. I was talking about that with Dane Brugler on Mock Draft Monday this week. That like they could be the team that Dallas tries to trade down with, and there could certainly still be a receiver available in that scenario. So yeah, definitely a lot of options on the table for Cleveland. And I agree with you. Like, one, you want somebody to put Jerry Jeudy as not your number 1 receiver. Judy's not a number 1. He should be a number 2. And really, he had his best season in 2024 when they had it was Amari Cooper at X at the beginning of the year, but then they traded him halfway through the year, and then Cedric Tillman became the X, and Jeudy was that movement Z. For whatever reason, I think part of it was because they liked Tillman's ability to block, so bring him more closer, condensed to the line of scrimmage there, to the offensive line. Then he was the Z, and Jeudy was the X, and like even Jeudy said, like, I didn't really love the way I was used last year, and I'm with you. I'm not usually a Jeudy defender, but I was with him on that regard. Like that's gonna like get him into that vertical route tree that he's not great on. Multiple breaks in the route, that's not great for him. You want one cut, put your foot in the ground and go. And for him, I think you get him back into that Z role. So somebody like, so I said Boston, bigger body on the ball to allow Jeudy to move around and get away from press and into just more of those off man situations with the free release. There's plenty of guys, even if it's not in the first round, you could find some of those bigger body perimeter receivers on day 2 as well.
Yeah, and I'm curious what what they decide at 6 is going to be very kind of indicative of what else they do. I know that sounds obvious, but they almost have to play a little game. It's if they take a receiver at 6, okay, we hope that the O-line run doesn't happen before our next pick, which I think is fun, like a little bit of a little dare, like a little bet they have to make.
That could be tough.
They can address these two. Yeah. Or they go O-line and they go, all right, we only like these 2 receivers. Hopefully the next one's there in the 20s. Like no matter what, are going to have to take a little risk if they prefer a certain type. So I'm very curious what they end up doing. I know they won't take a quarterback. They shouldn't. But so that's going to be, again, another team maybe watching that Texas film, which I'll be using that joke for the next 9 months. So get used to it. All right, last one here. We got the Kansas City Chiefs. Quarterback. Makes sense. NFL IQ. I totally agree with this one because maybe you traded away one of them and your other one got signed by the same exact team. So the Chiefs traded away Trent McDuffie, a trade that I actually liked a lot for the Rams. Chiefs, okay, we'll see what you're going to do here. And then lose Jalen Watson also to the Rams. Again, I like the Rams move there. The Chiefs have had some success. McDuffie was a high pick, but they've had some success with some day 3, day 2 DBs contributing and being positive players. Jalen Watson was one of those, a 7th rounder. Steve Spagnuolo, their defense coordinator, has had some nice finds over the years and just kind of knows how to use kind of maybe more particular guys. I think they need a corner, but they are picking at 9 and they have a lot of maybe possibilities there to address their offense as well, which is kind of what I lean. Are they going to be the first team to take a receiver though? I don't know. But what do you think about the Chiefs maybe leaning towards quarterback from NFL IQ?
Yeah, they typically with this position, they have been kind of willing to cobble it together too. That's what will be fascinating. Are they going to go off trend here? Like they've allowed, hey, we've got Spags, like one of the best defensive back coaches, Dave Merritt, their secondary coach. They've trusted him a lot to just kind of build that group up. And I wonder if they do that again this year. I wonder if they go along with that kind of philosophy and they don't take a corner in the first round. And obviously we'll be doing a draft show. Everybody doing a draft show. Be like, who's going to line up for cornerback with the Kansas City Chiefs? So that might happen here, but yeah, they're in a unique position there where they normally don't find themselves picking 9th overall in the freaking NFL draft. So very fascinated to see what they end up doing there, and I think they will listen, obviously receiver would be great, but you've talked about it. You and your dad talked about it on the offensive line show. Like there's some really good linemen in this class. And I know they've taken and they've put a lot of resources into that offensive line. Wouldn't be surprising to me to see them continue to build in the trenches there too, which again, if you just look at their depth chart right now, you'd think cornerback, but based on the talent available and just kind of the philosophy of this organization, that will be tested in April this year.
Yeah, I like their signing of Kenneth Walker. That was a big thing for me, is adding some juice at running back, but they need so much juice at their skill players still. I know they took Xavier Worthy. Oh, yeah. I know they have Rashee Rice on the roster, but just someone that is a little bit more tangible or can stay on the field for various reasons. But and I think at 9, they might be the first team to take a receiver. Maybe if Carnell Tate's gone, like maybe they don't want to go that path. Also Andy Reid, who has a lot of influence on the picks there in Kansas City. He kind of just does his own thing. Like he doesn't have maybe those hard tiers or thresholds for positions. So they could be a Reuben Bain team. My comparison for Reuben Bain's been Brandon Graham. Drafted Brandon Graham? Andy Reid in Philadelphia. So another kind of like maybe they are just a team that, to me, it's kind of like BPA at 9. I'd prefer a skill guy, but if they go with an edge rusher, totally get it. If they go corner, totally get it. If they go safety, Caleb Downs, totally get it. Also kind of illustrates where they're at right now, where I'm like, yeah, totally. They can address all these positions. So they have picks 9, 29, 40, sitting okay to address all those spots. Kenyon Sadiq, tight end from Oregon, another interesting name that they might want to throw, get some juice, get the Travis Kelce successor. They can go a lot of different paths here. So I do think they need to go corner, but it might not be the first round. It might be pick 40, it might be pick 74. And I actually think there's some good corners in the second round and on day 2 as well. So that, again, was NFL IQ, powered by Amazon Quick. Thank you so much for letting us tap into that, where you can use AI to answer all your NFL draft questions. Make sure to visit NFL.com/IQ and check it out for yourself. Some good stuff there. I'm glad you, and we also had an instance of you using it naturally. So double plug for NFL IQ on this show today. So that was some good stuff. But we'll be back after the break with the rest of the wide receiver class. I promise it won't be another hour. See you guys in a sec. We are back. Thanks again, NFL.com/IQ. And also, after looking at the top 6, there's a lot of receivers. There's going to be a lot of receivers in every draft class. Maybe not always top 10 guys, maybe not always those first round guys, but there are in some of this class. There's a lot of day 2 guys. I've been trying to figure out how many are going to get into my top 100. I might be up to like 17 at this point, 16, somewhere in that range, maybe even 18 as we talk about it. But we have a list here, kind of laid off guys. I think that you have done reception perception scouting on, guys I've written up as well. We have 10. This is not in any order. This is just kind of rattling them off. I got Tennessee receiver Chris Brazell. Indiana Elijah Surratt, the other Indiana receiver. Louisville's receiver Chris Bell. Alabama's Jeremy Bernard. Georgia's Zachariah Branch. God, name and actually having my dad on the show was great because people have realized why I mispronounce names so much. But then we got Notre Dame's Malachi Fields. It's just a brain thing. I don't know what it is. Clemson's Antonio Williams. Oklahoma's Deion Burks. UConn's Skylar Bell, former Badger. Georgia State's Ted Hurst. Ole Miss's Dazon Stribling, and in North Dakota State's Bryce Lance. Any of these guys grabbed your attention? Maybe a guy who you put up at 7th after we knocked off maybe that top 6, or maybe just your next crop of guys that you want to highlight here, Matt?
Yeah. Well, and by the way, if we're talking about the consensus board, there's 20 in the top 120. The 2 other guys that we didn't have there, because 18. Brennan Thompson from Mississippi State, 164 pounds, 5'9", who can legit outrun an entire SEC defense. He can fly. He's 164 pounds, though. So there's him, and then Jacoby Lane, the other USC receiver, which...
Thank you.
Not for me, but like very sacrificial X at best. Yes. Marquez Valdez Scantling, but better at the catch point. 2 guys. Speaking of sacrificial X, 2 guys I wanted to run by you because this is right up your alley. The 2 guys I would bucket.
There's so many sacrificial X's in this group, and this is my crop of guys here.
There is, but if there's 2 guys that I think could maybe be candidates to move from X and be converted to either power slot or at least off ball receivers based on reception perception historic data. I just did a whole breakdown for this on my YouTube channel. Like I'll just be real quick with a summary of it. I've got a bunch of dudes over the last few all the classes that I've tracked. So this is back to 2016, 2017, 2018, and then 2021 to current. Skip 2 classes because of film-based reasons. Anyways, the vast majority of the guys who are below the 35th percentile in 2 of the 3 success rate versus zone, press, and man. Again, so below the 35th percentile in 2 of the 3. 43% of those guys who fall below that, they get cut on the rookie contract. So, and it's still the majority of players.
It's a pretty good hit list there. 50-50,
yeah, right. The majority of them just get cut on the rookie contract. Even if you just look at day 1 and day 2 picks, still the highest percentage of the bucket gets cut on the rookie contract. A little bit better, but still a little bit lower number, but still the vast majority of these guys don't work out. The ones that do work out in terms of high volume players, there's a handful of sacrificial X, volatile deep threat, Kayshon Boutte type players. Again, I think the sacrificial X bucket based on what he was last year. But the guys who become high volume, high productive players in the NFL, they become power slot players. So the 2 guys I kind of think could be this year is Indiana wide receiver Elijah Surratt and Notre Dame wide receiver Malachi Fields. Fields is tougher.
I knew it would be Fields.
So Fields is tougher because both of these guys have low success rate versus man press. Like I think they struggle. I don't know how you can watch them and think they don't struggle to separate on the perimeter. But both are really smart. Like Fields is a former quarterback, I believe, actually, from the Charlottesville area. He was at UVA, transferred to Notre Dame. And he has, I think like Cooper Kupp is another one of these guys that I thought just read zone coverage so well, like a damn quarterback. And Surratt both these guys are really good zone beaters. So like, I think there's something to work there if we're going to kick them inside and they're going to run against more zone coverages because of that. So that's just like the historic trends of those guys who end up working out. Now Fields, I think we might run into something I've been thinking about the last couple of classes with Keon Coleman and Jaden Higgins, 2 other guys I thought would make more sense in this regard. They're almost like too big to be big slots, like 6'4", 218, I think, is what Fields is listed at. But Surratt, this is why I think he's a perfect candidate for this. 6'2", 212. He's like the perfect size to be kind of like a bigger slot receiver in that like Juju Smith-Schuster mold. So Surratt definitely has separation concerns if he's working on the perimeter, but so good at the catch point, so smart against zone coverage. I would like to see the right team take him and at least move him off ball as a Z that takes about like 40% snaps in the slot. That's what I'd like to see for both of these guys. And because of that, like there's definitely volatility. Like they could be one of these guys that just wash out completely, or I think the right team could find a good spot for them.
I know it's really hard to like kind of tier these guys too. And we're going to talk about some different flavors. And it's like, okay, well, then this is team dependent now. It's like, all right, well, this guy I like for this guy I like for this. I'll start with Fields. Fields grew on me. Like he's a guy I watched one game of him during the season. It was against Pitt. I was like, okay, I kind of know what you are. Big, don't really separate that well. Yeah. Decent ball skills. You know, he made a great catch in that game. Tough.
Oh, great catch.
Smart.
Yeah,
you can tell he's smart. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, third rounder. I'm good there. You know, and which is weird. Again, I just emphasize how much I like size and Denzel Boston. So that should be significant for people when I go, a big guy like that's a third rounder. You know, that's kind of my parlance. Oh, I don't really like him much, you know, but then I watch him again when doing the real cycle of draft process, you know, watching more games, 3, 4, 5 games of these guys. Now I got the combine numbers. It's weird. He didn't time well, ran a 4.61, but when you watch him in his route breaks, he's actually very fluid and quick, and he's got some burst. Like his curl routes and his breaking routes, they run like a hinge route. So like a hinge route is you run vertically and then you open up like a door hinge and you break to the outside and you loosen up the outside. And it's a really good route to see how a receiver gets in and out of his breaks, whether he gets to his route depth, which is something we emphasized in the first kind of segment, but also just how they kind of get out of the break. Like Devontae Smith is a master of it. This is something he does so well, how he gets out of these stop routes. Elijah Surratt, very good on him as well, because Indiana actually ran him. Watched the first play against Oregon. But why I'm saying all that is a guy like Malachi Fields is, I would assume if I saw that 4.61, saw him again a couple games early on, okay, he's not going to be great at these, but he's actually like kind of dang good at them. So I'm not shocked that you like say that, oh, he's a power slot type, because I do think he has the smarts, which you need to be a power slot. It's no mistake. Chris Godwin is one of the best power slots, and Robert Woods, one of the best power slots in recent times, because they're very smart players that understand how to kind of read the in-between stuff. But he has some nice moments like that. And I said, you're hoping Fields can end up being Juwan Jennings. That's kind of who I kind of came to with him. And like, inside outside guy, not overly flashy, not Juwan Jennings, former quarterback, ran a 4.7 coming out in the draft cycle, ended up going undrafted. Guess what? Kyle Shanahan, who has a receiver background, pretty dang good at scouting receivers, but not overly fast, but has a game that grows on you, has that physicality. Jennings is a dynamite run blocker. Fields has moments of physicality, but I do think that's in there. And then he had a play against Boston College. Quarterback throws a pick way downfield, and it's not targeted to Fields. And this is just something I picked up over the years, and just speaking of competitiveness with players, especially receivers, how they run down like a turnover. And it's not just all glass eating stuff. Like there's actually some real competitiveness things you can take away from that. There's Fields running all the way across the field to tackle this DB, and he makes a great tackle on him as well. And again, that's just kind of speaking to what you're saying. There might be that grittiness power slot to him. That's what the kind of mindset you have to have. These are things you try to extrapolate from the film. So a guy that I was pretty cool on relatively, he's really grown on me as I watched more, dove more into him and exactly how I picture him. I think he's just a secondary kind of guy, auxiliary receiver type, but I think he could be a nice dirty work guy. So I understand you're kind of maybe too big, but I do think his mindset and his physicality will make sense, and his smarts. And then Surratt, back shoulder wizard, like so good with that body control. And even just speaking to not even just his physicality, his route running from the inside, or maybe those quicker routes, makes me optimistic about how he would project on the inside, because he's really smooth. Like he's not overly twitchy as a player, but he's really smooth getting in and out of stuff. So I think the power slot, your routes, sometimes it's a vertical route tree from there, but sometimes you're going to be asked to run those stick routes and quick out routes. And I think Surratt's actually pretty dang good at them for a guy that might get pigeonholed as an X. So long-winded way to say I agree with you, Matt Harmon. I think both of these guys can be nice power slot candidates. But how do you kind of have them stacked up or graded? I looked at them both as maybe late second, third round types, maybe third round types if I'm splitting hairs. But did you kind of have them maybe warmer or cooler than that?
Yeah, they would fall into what I would call like a good day 2 pick. So kind of same thing. Like not a, I got to rush out to the top of the first round or top of the second round, and take this guy. But definitely like a good day 2 picks. And some of that is again, hedging of do they get pigeonholed in the sacrificial X bucket, or do they kind of have like a more creative usage plan, which I think would maximize them.
All right. Next 2 guys I want to ask you about, Chris Brazell from Tennessee and Chris Bell from Louisville. So
baby.
You actually have numbers behind it, but it's even if you just even look at numbers about receivers lining up on one side of the field, and that would be the Tennessee offense, which is kind of be a hindrance for some of these guys. And then Chris Bell, before I kind of even get it to him, he's kind of what Treylon Burks was supposed to be. That's kind of what I've kind of come to with him. Very like big hands, explosive, a little raw, but just an incredible athlete, but just tore his ACL as well this year, which is kind of like just as he was starting to pick up, gets hurt. But these 2, what'd you think of them? Because I love more than even just the top guys, these type of guys that are they have blemishes, but then they have traits that are so outstanding. Like Brazell is like so fluid of a mover. He's so fast. He eats up ground. He can get in and out of breaks, but he's so raw. So these guys, I'm always fascinated to hear what you think, because you kind of even get into the nitty gritty with it. But these 2, Bell and Brazell, what'd you think of them?
Yeah, you mentioned it. They're both what I would call skewed alignment wide receivers, which is players that take 70% or more of their snaps in the games that I've charted on one outside receiver position. For Brazell, it was all on the right side. Yeah. Same with Chris Bell. Now I've heard from in previous seasons, Bell played more like he actually played all left the year prior at Louisville. So that's interesting. I don't know what to do with that. So I'm just like talking about historical trends of what I've charted.
I don't know what to do with that. It's weird. I'm not going to think about it.
Exactly. 35 players fit this bucket of guys that I've charted historically prospects. These players go on to average 18.9 yards per game in the NFL.
God.
18.9 yards per game. So it is a lot of away. There's 4 like true hits. There's some guys like we mentioned. Cedric Tillman was one of these guys. Not Quinton Judkins. Quentin Johnston is one of these guys. So it's like, okay, well, they became like somewhat useful players, but I would say like 4 true hits, guys that averaged over 45 yards per game so far in their career. Rashee Rice, DJ Moore, Drake London, Juju Smith-Schuster. So again, it's just prospects that I've charted, but those are the only 4 guys. Everybody else, it's like some real bust like Corey Coleman, Josh Doxson, which is, I think, to the Brazell point, he is one of like the highest rates of snaps on one side of the field I've charted in freaking years, because he comes from that Looney Tunes Tennessee offense. Shout out to Charles McDonald for the Looney Tunes offense term. Brazell, definitely, like, you're right. He's so loose hipped. He's fluid. You see the route charts here. Like, he's good in that intermediate area, digs and outs, because he can fully open his hips and win against man coverage in that way. However, he's really raw when truly working the vertical stem. His work against press is not great. His work against zone is not great. But he's good at the catch point. He extends. Problem is, though, he's coming from this stripped down offense. Like, the media was really high on Jalen Hyatt that year he came out, and he went in the 60s. And I think that's probably going to happen with Brazell. Plus, there are some character red flags for him where I've heard some people think he might not even go in the top 2 days. So, like, I think he's a very volatile prospect. I called him in my write-up a very obvious blend of red flags and high upside traits. So, like, you can kind of do with that what you want. He probably would be a guy I would let somebody else do that discovery journey. Bell, I'm more interested in than Brazell, because I think he actually shows more like NFL press coverage ability. It's not great. It's still a work in progress, but it's definitely better, I think, than Brazell. And I've been obsessed with Alec Pierce during this draft cycle, Nate. You know, and you'll think about this because you're a Pierce guy too. The reason Pierce was able to have the year that he just had is because he has always been good, relatively, on like 3 routes, but good against press man coverage, to the point that, like, he could just credibly be on the field and he wasn't a total dud. And that allowed him to just be on the field for 3 years, and with a patient organization, maybe sometimes patient to a fault, but a patient organization, to just get better and better and better. And by year 4, boom, he's like more of a full field player. And I think Bell has the chance to be that. But the problem is he's coming off this torn ACL, which really throws things off a little bit. Because like I would love it if he could just hit the field day one and like we're building him up and like he's kind of starts a little bit of a sacrificial X, and then by year 3 he's more of like a full field X, and he's beating press man coverage, and he's not AJ Brown, but he's like a poor man's version of AJ Brown, right? The ACL does just kind of throw that off a little bit, but still a player I like, and I would be willing to I'd be willing to take the shot on Chris Bell.
Yeah, I think these two are dart throw types in a way, and I would rather bet on Bell as well. Like his stuff is, the explosiveness is just notable. Like, I mean, another guy that, he has 10-inch hands. I was going to say, you easily can tell he has big hands because he just snatches that football. And then all of a sudden, watch the Miami game. Many people have shared these clips, but when you see him catching those balls and running afterwards, it doesn't look like he's moving fast, and then you just see him pulling away from everybody. Like no one's even, all the angles are getting erased. It's kind of that. Then you realize how big he is. He's all of 220. He's bigger than Denzel Boston. This is a big dude that's so explosive. And I get he's raw, but I do think he has some more real football than like a Treylon Burks did, who had to be told what route to run on every single play. You look at Bell, and even this is background.
He's better than the Xavier Legette, Jonathan Mingo like group that he sometimes gets.
Correct.
He's better than that to me.
I agree. I have a bigger grade on him than any of these guys that we just talked about. Yeah, Burks. Yeah. Yep. Those guys that are kind of those raw athletes, maybe late bloomer types. I think Bell has a little bit more want to and real football to him, even if he is rawer. And I do think Bell, Dane Brugler, of course, with the Beast from The Athletic, has some great background on everybody. But he has a cool one on Bell where he said he was undersized going into his freshman year. He was cut from the football team, which is still crazy. Even if you're undersized, how is he not freaky already? He still wanted to be around the game. He joined the band, played baritone, so you could attend home and away games. This is Bell's quote. I'm not musical. I couldn't play at all. I used to march with the horn up to my mouth. It was just my way of getting into games. Want to talk about a guy that likes football?
That's pretty cool.
This guy joined.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good sign.
I know you like these things are like, you can paint any picture of these guys, but these just little things is why you got a little bit more optimistic about him. Like he has that want to in his play that I'm willing to bet on more a little bit, even without interviewing. I've never interviewed these guys or talked to them. I'm just watching them on film. He just has a little bit more of that grit on top of being just a whirlwind. I mean, just a supernova athlete. Like I encourage anybody to watch his highlights. It's really cool to watch him with the ball in his hands. Like that is a big dude moving. But I do think he has some want to him. So I've been figuring out exactly how to stack him, but he made my top 60 on my last big board. And I feel like that's exactly where I'll have him. Like somewhere in that late 40s, 50s range, somewhere around there. I wish he didn't have the ACL. I was a little higher on him before that, of course, but it's just trying to weigh that with everything. But there's a lot to like with Chris Bell. And then Brazzell, just too many red flags. You said a red blend, like it's a wine. Like that's exactly that's what he is to me. And it's like, I look, you watch him and you're like, I'm sure if you just watch him and without pads on, it's probably so pretty. He's a easy mover. He's big. All this stuff, but it's like there's so much when I watch him. I'm like, man, I don't know if this guy even knows any of the details so I think there's a lot of growing pains there that's going to happen. I wouldn't be comfortable taking him till late round, like easily into round 3, like pick 75 and beyond.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know the off-field stuff, so that's probably way that even a little lower. So yeah, I have Bell probably a half tier above that. Let's get into maybe some of these slot only guys. Or do you want to get to some of the, what I would call the undersized speedsters? There's quite a few. How about Jeremy Bernard? Let's just get him out of the way. He's the room that ties, he's the rug that ties the room together. Glue guy, Jeremy.
Glue guy. Yep.
Glue guy. Day 2, Zacchaeus, whatever, however you want to describe this guy. Like, this is what I picture Bernard. I don't think you have any, I think that was your kind of write up on him as well. Just kind of, he ties the room together. He's your number 3. He does everything well. He blocks, kind of just gets the job done, and you're happy having him on the roster, but understand what he is.
Totally. But in the right system, he could be really productive. He feels like the guy that the Packers will take in round 3 and tie their room together and get on the field for 30% of the snaps. Maybe not traitsy enough, but definitely a guy that, in the right system, he could be really, really productive. But slot heavy, can play outside. Just if you're a dig route dork, which I think we both are, you're gonna love this guy. Like it just runs dig routes all day, and he's really, really good at them. So yeah, look, that's where teams are attacking 2 high safeties. Like, put your big boy pants, drop back, and launch it over the middle of the field. This guy can help you do that.
Yep. And also a Vegas guy, and another one of the 500 awesome receivers that ended up at Washington before transferring out. That receiver room had him, Roman Dunze, Jalen McMillan, Jalen Polk, Denzel Boston, and then Puka Nacua at one point as well. But he, I know. I think everybody's on the same page. Everyone likes him. Like, everyone's just like on the same page. Everyone I talk to has him graded the same. Like, in the league, national analysts, you just talking right now, everyone's on the same page with him. It's kind of fun sometimes when that happens. And the draft class has no consensus. Jeremy Bernard's got a lot of consensus.
So it'll be Jalen Polk, and he'll be terrible in the league.
Oh, no, don't. He felt so safe.
I know. This is what Polk was supposed to be, though. Like, it is worth saying that.
Felt so safe, and he nuked in my face. Everybody's faces. That was I was like, I don't know. Firecracker just blew up my face. That's God. Also a Vegas guy, by the way, too. But Bernard too. Also just some size stuff. He is 6'1 1/4, 206. Got big hands. Chris Bell, I mentioned how big he was, just to kind of so I know not every people knows this like the back of their hands like we do at this point. 6'2", 222, 10-inch hands. I mentioned that. And then Chris Brazell, 6'4", 198. So he's that tall, long guy with long arms. He can move. He ran a 4.37, but it's just all the detail stuff with him. All right. Let's get into these kind of this little group of guys. You got Zachariah Branch from Georgia, transferred from USC. Oh yeah, and Brazell transferred from Tulane. Just last little piece of information. Antonio Williams, slot type from Clemson. I really like him, smooth guy. Deion Burks from Oklahoma, undersized guy. I think you and I have the exact same one-liner on him. I looked it up after I wrote it, so it's kind of funny. UConn Scholar Bell. Any of these kind of maybe smaller guys or speedier guys that maybe you want to highlight or talk about?
Yeah, Antonio Williams was the guy compared to Sterling Shepard. Just long time, reliable. And look, Sterling would have had a much better career had he not had all those injuries. He's a great player. So that's not a knock for me whatsoever. Antonio Williams is just tough because, like, almost exclusively in the slot in the games, almost exclusively off ball in the games I charted. Like, in a tight end, heavier personnel world, like there's less snaps available for these guys. But I think he'll be a really good, useful player who can beat man coverage from the slot and tracks the ball better than I was expecting down the field. So I really like Williams. He's the type of guy I'd like to bet on. He's, to me, the top of this kind of maybe slot only bucket. And
he is for me.
Look, I was just on JJ Zach Reeson's show, like I mentioned yesterday. He does like database prospecting. So he like almost laughed me off the show for bringing this guy up. But there's something about Deion Burks, man, that I really, really like. I'm not going to say I want to like flag plant this guy because I know, like, to JJ's point, like he does database work and like his production is like atrocious profile. Like his production profile is terrible. Like the bucket that he falls in JJ's stuff, like the best hit from that group is like Josh Palmer, which it's not great, but like, and obviously they're not comparable players. Yeah, right. That's the best hit that come out of this like group of production based players. But like, dude, Deion is jacked. He's ripped. He's like a muscle ball at 5'10", 5'9", 180 pounds. And I think he like is so tough and competitive. He fights back to the football against zone coverage on like stop routes and curl routes. And I don't know, like he definitely can. He got swallowed up in the LSU game against like some of their really good corners on the outside. Yeah. So that is definitely an issue. You don't want him going against press coverage, but man coverage from the slot as like a vertical slot option. I don't know, man. I really appreciated how tough he was. And just, I think he's so explosive. So there's something to Deion Burks. And like, if I don't want to like truly flag plant, cause he would be a classic like Matt Harmon fell for it again, small slot receiver. But like if Zachariah Branch can go on day 2, like Deion Burks can go on day 2. Come on. I don't care like how many screens Georgia fed Zachariah Branch. Deion Burks, I think, is more impressive.
Oh, I should have looked up Zachariah Branch's target map before the show because it is astounding. I think half his targets are screens.
I can tell you about Zachariah Branch. The game, this is obviously just my charting, but he ran a screen route on almost 29% of his routes I charted. That is the most I've ever charted for a prospect. The only ones who come close are Rondale Moore, rest in peace, 20.9%. Amari Rogers, 18.9%. Darius Stewart, remember that name, 16%. Mm-hmm. No one else in any player I've charted has ever hit 15%. So like, yeah, straight up just one of the weirder profiles I've ever collected.
Yeah. So I agree with you on Burks. He's got some more real stuff to him than maybe just being, that's the undersized speed guy or something like that. Slot vertical guy. Like that's probably his archetype and everything, but I like that. I agree with you. Antonio Williams is the guy I probably have on the top of the slot only, which I usually, if you're slot only to me, usually you get into the third round. If I like you, if I love you, okay, then we bump up higher. We talked about those guys earlier. But if I'm liking you, this is just my grading scale. It's more of a third round grade, but on the top of that tier is Antonio Williams to me because he's just smooth and just, I'm glad you mentioned it. You do a great job of it, talking about where personnels are now. Like that role is getting more limited, but what he is at that role, he's good at. He's good at whatever that's going to be, 50% of the snaps or whatever. Every time the ball goes his way, you're not like unhappy about it. It just every ball was efficient. Every route he got to the right depth. Every route it was the right timing. He was always in the right spot. Like he is just another guy that. Again, these guys aren't usually my favorites because I just know what the role is in the NFL. I'm like, okay, you're the one I would like because I just think you understand the position and understand how to play it and stuff and just good feel for everything. Smooth is why I kind of kept coming back to. Talk about Burks. Skylar Bell, transfer from Wisconsin, how I remember it was Wisconsin was he had speed and I like him attacking vertically and I like him with the ball in his hands as a splitter, not maybe like a juke guy.
Yeah,
but man, he had such bad drops early on in his career. And then I think that's really improved when I watched him at UConn, which was astounding because he was so frustrating when he was at Wisconsin. But another guy I could say are more of a late third, early fourth tier. I'm trying to decide if he will be in my top 100, but he's kind of on that borderline, but I appreciate his speed. So I would just want to get to these last couple guys because I thought you did such a good job kind of highlighting all this. Branch, I think, has got some twitch and everything, but again, kind of that same category for me, kind of late third. He's got some turn ability, which helps out. But again, I only could get so high with that. Undersized, bunch of screens, glorified gadget guy. The last kind of three, Ted Hurst from Georgia State, Bryce Lance from North Dakota State, and then Dazon Stribling from Ole Miss. I really like Stribling. I have probably going to be one of the higher guys. You do? Oh man, this is a pro. He blocks his butt off. He's got some more burst to him. He tested real well, but you watch him against Georgia taking one to the house. I think he's got a good feel over the middle. Like this guy, I think this guy could be a good number 2. Like, and I think he can be a power slot type. I think he can play on the outside. I think he's smart. Probably my more pleasant surprises. Like I have him pretty high. Like I have a late second grade on him, and like he would probably be a top 60 guy for me. Yeah, he's a guy that he's one of my later
I'm working on right now. So I'm only like about 5 of the 8 games I'm going to do through. And he really did impress me. Like, and I wasn't even sure like if I was gonna get to him, even though like I said, I'm gonna get 30 receivers. So he definitely snaps off routes against man coverage, working over the middle of the field really well, gets into slants well, makes some big boy catches too. I think he'll be 24 in December. That is something to talk about, like Malachi Fields, Skylar Bell, they'll be 24-year-old rookies. That's always something you got to remember when you're watching these guys. Like, are they just dunking on dudes that are younger than them? This is like an important thing to talk about. But yeah, for Stribling though, definitely a guy. I agree with you. Like he pleasant surprise for me.
Yeah. Before I even get to it, Bryce Lance is the other guy I'm very high on too. Probably having the same thing, late second, early third grade. Will make my top 60 pretty easily. I looked this up for him because he's another receiver that's 24 or older when he gets drafted. So since 2002, when the NFL went to 32 teams, there have been receivers drafted in the top 100 that are 24 or older. You got Terry McLaurin, Calvin Ridley, Cooper Kupp, John Brown, Kenny Galladay, Ricky Pearsall, Roddy White, Harry Douglas, and Terrence Williams. Not a bad hit rate.
It's not bad.
I was actually kind of right. I actually was surprised.
Sort of what we were talking about earlier, where like draft capital will usually tell you, like, yeah, if they go in the top 100, like there's probably a reason because they're good. Like their film is worth making the exception for. Whereas a guy like, admittedly, I liked this guy in last year's class. Andrew Armstrong turned 25 in October last year. And I was like, ooh, his film is really good. He didn't even make the Dolphins' final roster. Because he led the SEC in receiving while being 24-year-old, probably like smacking around guys who can't even, legally drink yet, or maybe even buy a pack of cigarettes.
So what college hockey's right. Like there's a guy that scored a goal. I went to the Wisconsin-Denver game, but there's a guy that scored a goal in the Frozen Four, and they're like, "You're a 23-year-old freshman. What was it like playing?" Because the guys play juniors and then they go play college. So 23-year-old freshman playing his game, hanging out with 18 and 17-year-olds. But I'll end this real quick when these last two guys, I know you have to get out of here. North Dakota State, Bryce Lance. I'm high on him. I know he's older. I know he's a late bloomer, all that stuff. I think he's just an easy mover, and I see the vertical ability. I understand he's a little raw on some stuff. I'm just willing to bet on this because I think he's got good hands, and that's what makes me more encouraged, even more than Christian Watson, which is so easily to helmet scout these two because there's so much similar player profiles. But man, he's an easy mover. Like I would even say borderline special mover. Like that testing is valid when you watch him on film. Like he's playing FCS, and I acknowledge that, but he looks like a guy that's a freak athlete playing FCS. Like he just runs by everybody. And I think the raw route stuff has to improve, but I do think it's not too bad where I'm like, oh, this guy's no idea what he's doing. And also think the quarterback, their offense, there's a lot of 2-man routes. So you didn't really get to see him maybe take that next step in a more kind of diverse offensive system because that's just what they ran with Cole Payton. But I know I'm going to be one of the higher guys on him. I know he's got some people that like him, but I'm probably one of the guys that likes him, like third grader style. But Bryce Lance, I've talked about him before, and then Ted Hurst from Georgia State. Did you have any thoughts on those two before we get out of here?
Yeah, Lance is funny. If we're comparing these two guys, I think Lance is more that vertical perimeter receiver, whereas Hurst I kind of view as more of a slasher, like in the Torrey Horton mold last year. I know that Lance is bigger. Hurst is bigger, but that's sort of how I viewed Torrey Horton last year as a perimeter receiver that can beat man coverage, but is more of that like slasher on in-breaking routes, which is where Hurst does his best stuff. Now, if he can get better in the vertical game, like we're talking about a really, really appealing player, but I think there's some development that needs to occur there, which is the same with Lance. But I thought the encouraging thing for Lance, and I probably like him like late third, early fourth round. You probably like him a little bit more than me, but I thought he had this like weird running style where he almost like leaned in. Did you ever think like he kind of like leans into his routes in like a weird way?
He runs like this.
Yeah, he runs like his hands out like weird,
like a penguin.
Weird running style that I thought he got like better cutting that out as his career went on. The only thing at the catch point is he does like cradle catch a lot of stuff, and like I'd like to see that get better. But again, we're talking about a third rounder. That's fine.
Right. Yeah, and that's it. It's like I have to be. I like him, but it's like but before pick 45, I'm getting a little dicey. Okay, once we get to pick 50, I'm much more comfortable with him there. But and then Hurst, my last little thoughts here. I'm sorry. Big long strider, build up speed, got some fluidity, but also like he might have big feet. That's my theory on him. He trips a lot. Like contact, he just like stumbles. I don't know what it is. Like I have no stat about that. I can't look that up, but just watching my 3 games on him, it was just like there's some lack of detail, which makes sense. He transferred from Valdosta State to Georgia State, so maybe not in the tip top, coaching refinement and everything. But I don't know. There's just something where how high he runs, he kind of stumbles and stuff. And I know that's just a quirk thing, but it's just notable. When it came up enough and I noted it, I'm gonna have to bring that up. But man, he's a big athlete, and I love how he put it. He's a slasher, as opposed to maybe just a downfield guy, but. If it took us 2 hours to get through the receivers, that's because that's how many freaking receivers are in this draft. Now imagine Matt's workload every single day, but
there's more.
Thank you so much, Matt. I know you're jam-packed with all this stuff, so I appreciate you so much for joining me on this. So please make sure you check out all of Matt's work. It's awesome. It's invaluable. do your own research, but use Matt's to supplement it just a little bit, or just use Matt and copy and paste it like I see a lot of other people do. No. I at least give them some credit sometimes, people. Please, when I see you guys using the same line that I hear Matt say on a pod, I'm going to know exactly where that came from. But Matt, you're the best. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you next week. See you in New York.
Yes, sir. That's right.
We'll be there for the draft show. So
it's gonna be great.
I'm looking forward to it too. I know. So yeah, check out Reception Projection, Yahoo Fantasy Forecast. Him and I will be doing some shows soon. Dane Brugler joins me on Thursday. He just joined Matt. He joins me on Thursday for kind of a last kind of like, we're breaking the bottle on the draft, the ship for the draft week, and then just kind of coasting off into our final thoughts as we package things together. But I'm Nate Tice. You can find me at Nate_Tice. That is Matt Harmon. You can find him at Matt Harmon_BYB. Make sure to check out all of his good stuff. Subscribe to us, follow us, rate us 5 stars. Pretty please. Leave us some reviews, replies, comments. That stuff's so great. Thank you so much for the feedback with my show with my dad. We love doing it. He loves seeing that, reading it. It like really put a pep in the step. It really did. It was a lot of fun doing that with him. So glad that you guys like it as well. We love doing it on our end as well. But watch us on YouTube as well, the Yahoo Sports YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe there. Leave comments there. Thanks to everyone behind the scenes for making us look and sound good. We'll be seeing you guys soon. And thank you all for listening. See you guys next time.